The Linux Action Show is created by Jupiter Broadcasting. It's sponsored by Ting. Go to last.ting.com to save off your first device or plan, and DigitalOcean. Go over to DigitalOcean.com and use our promo code LASTDigital, and then you can spin up your own Linux rig for free. Welcome to Linux Action Show, episode 373. My name is Chris.
And my name is Noah.
Hey, Noah, guess what? Big show today. So the audience out there heard us mention it last week, the YubiKey. It is a hardware device that promises to make your SSH logins more secure, easier, and obviously more automated. We'll talk about the YubiKey today and how you can get started with it and why you might want to make it part of your daily routine. And also, maybe a few other ideas for your SSH hygiene. And then in the news segment, we're going to get down to the details about the NSA using Red Hat to spy on the United States of America. OpenSUSE has some huge changes coming up, and perhaps number 42 has the answer to all of it. And also, Canonical has some big news when it comes to Lenovo laptops and VirtualBox. It's not dead. The rumors have been greatly exaggerated. We'll tell you about the new features in version 5.0. And of course, in the feedback segment, we've got some great emails from the audience. But first, Noah, before all of that in today's episode, it is the picks. And this first pick this week, I'm ready. I'm not Mr. Health over here, Noah. I'm going to be the first person to admit that. I could use a personal trainer in my life, but the thing is, I don't like people. You know, humans.
That's a problem.
Yeah, no, I just can't stand them. And I'm ready for the robots to take over, but I just don't want it to run proprietary software.
You're ready for the robots to take over. That's rich coming from you. Every other time we've talked about robots on the show, you freak out about how robots are going to kill you. Look at that thing. That thing's going to chase you. That thing's going to that is going to eat you as you're walking up to get your Cheerios in the morning.
Yeah. Well, that's actually true for this one too, because guess what, Noah? Your new personal trainer runs Linux. That's right. It's a robot.
Dia o Vizi poderá ser dos melhores amigos dos humanos, ou pelo menos pode tornar-se dos primeiros personal trainers.
Personal trainer, there you go. Now, actually, as we watch the video here, Noah, if you watch closely, it's not all that big of a mystery. The thing is just a full-fledged PC. Below its belly is its guts. It's an ATX motherboard. It is an ATX power supply. It is a full-fledged Linux rig. Now, I was fascinated by this, but there's as you might have noticed by the video, Noah, here, there's a bit of a language barrier.
Enquanto é apenas protótipo, mas em 2018.
But I was still fascinated by what's going on here. And it turns out this is a research project by Carnegie Mellon. And there's quite a bit of information online about it, including the entire damn source code to this entire thing. It's called the Vizi Robot, and it's the tools you need to get with the Vizi Robot are available up on GitHub. It's based on Ubuntu. Well, actually, it depends on which version you want to go with. You can go with Ubuntu 14.04. That's the latest version. But they also, the one that is most in production right now, is based on Ubuntu 12.04. So everything you need is available on GitHub. You download this thing, and Noah, check this out, man. With a couple of bash commands here. Look at this, Noah. Look. Here, so you check it out. You git clone the Vizi Robot stuff. You edit the bash RC. You build it, and then you run right here. Within 3 steps, you have the entire operating environment you need to run your own robot based on Ubuntu 14.04.
Can we take a look at 1 minute into the video?
Yeah. Okay, let me pull that up. Why, is there something there that's juicy?
I think that's where we'll see the Linux.
Ooh, you got a little Linux sighting, huh? Yeah. Okay. All right. Here. All right. Let me pull this up. So 1 minute, and here I'll jump ahead. I like the music track they got with this. We should find out.
It's very modern and makes you want to like groove out.
Have you ever played? There's a really good Android game that's like you break glass, and it sounds just like this. Here we go. Here's about a minute in right here. So hold on, it's buffering. Oh yeah. Look at that. Here, I'll pull up the audio. See what they say.
Unity there. Yeah.
Que tem autonomia para se deslocar e que na sua configuração máxima não deverá ter custo superior a 10.000 euros. Deste projeto de investigação também podem ser soluções mais simples que apenas executam algumas funcionalidades.
And you can see it has 2 wheels on the side and 2 wheels on the front and back. And Noah, one of the other things they're experimenting with this son of a gun is using the Microsoft Kinect hooked up to a Linux rig to get 3D imaging of the room. Just taking the Kinect to use as a main sensor to see what this thing's doing. Isn't that cool?
I'm glad to hear that the Kinect works with Linux.
Oh yeah. There's a lot of scientific projects going on under Linux in the Kinect right now.
Awesome.
Yeah. People have been working hard on that. Yeah. So the source code's available on GitHub. We'll have a link to that in the show notes. And then also, here's a picture of it for those of you watching the video version. And if you look right here, there's the power supply. There's the ATX power supply. There's a Cat5 hub right there. And there's a wireless access point right there. And then back in here is the motherboard and the connectivity. It's a really cool little unit, all run in Linux, and it can help you become more fit. Honestly, if I could go to a gym and have like a discounted rate to have this as a personal trainer, I actually would do that. I would do that today. Yeah. I would try it, because I figure it's probably like what, kind of like having an app on my phone, only better.
Yeah. Yeah, my problem with the gym has always been I never know what to do once I get there. Like, there's all these people, and they seem to have like the whole routine down.
I know,
and I'm
right?
just like, I'm walking around, and I'm like, so is there like a how-to somewhere? Yeah. Do we have like a quick start guide, or is there like, is there a how-to.html somewhere laying around I could get a hand?
Mine's always like, so you're all just getting naked? Like, you're all just gonna go shower? Like, I thought we had a big societal.
Oh, yeah, no, I wouldn't do that. Yeah, that wouldn't be me either.
This is what I don't understand about the gym is like all of these issues we have in society about the male body and being naked around people and like, you can't have females be topless. You can't, guys, can't, like all this stuff. And then you go to the gym, all bets are off. Like everybody gets to be naked. Everybody gets to shower and soap each other up around each. I'm not about that. No, I'm not about that. So if I could get this unit, if I could put it here in the house and I could do a little exercise here at the house with a personal quote unquote trainer that's a Linux powered robot, I'm going to give that a shot.
Here's the thing. The showering thing is just, it's an easy off. I'm just not going to shower at the gym. Like I'll drive home sweaty and I'll shower there. That's perfect. I'm perfectly okay with that.
I understand. No, I understand. But I don't like you stinking. So if you're in my neck of the woods, I want you to shower up. I'm just saying.
All right.
Now this is why you need a Linux powered robot to help you train in your house. That way you avoid all of these issues. And let's be honest, we all prefer to stay in our basements. Right? I would.
Right.
I would rather, well, in this case, it'd be my garage. I'd work out with a robot in the garage. I'd get a couple pieces of equipment. I'd have a Linux-powered robot, and I honestly would go out there and work out with this thing. Now, of course,
I'll be very honest with you. I bought a treadmill with the intention of working out my house. Yeah. It makes an excellent coat rack. I'm really happy we invested all that money in the treadmill, and I feel like the robot would be the same thing. I'd buy it for a personal trainer, and he'd be like, "Hey, look, it can get me a beer from the fridge. Look what I did. I can program it to get a beer from the fridge." I can program it to vacuum the house, and then I would get sidetracked with that.
Yeah, I totally do. You're right. And then I'd be like, "Hey Noah, could you send me those files you did to patch that thing to get it beer? Because I'd like to have my robot do that too."
Yeah, exactly. I tell you what, I'll upload it to GitHub. You can fork it, and then you can make changes.
That's exactly how it would go down. Yeah. All right. Well, or you know what else? You could also host it on your own GitLab, up on your own DigitalOcean. Drop it. Screw GitHub. Screw going out on the public web. Build your own cloud up on DigitalOcean. Go to DigitalOcean.com and use the promo code. You ready for this? It's a promo code of knowledge. Last Digital. Last Digital, all one word, lowercase, to give you a $10 credit. Now, I know what you're thinking. $10, Chris? What's that? Actually, over at DigitalOcean, it's an amazing amount. It's 2 months, absolutely free, of DigitalOcean. Last Digital. Now, DigitalOcean is a simple cloud hosting provider dedicated to offering the most intuitive and easy way for you to spin up your own cloud server. Now, I'm going to take what they just said there, and I'm going to spin it a little bit for you. DigitalOcean is the best place to have a machine that's powered by Linux and KVM that has incredible performance. It's all backed by SSDs, and they have some of the best connectivity on the internet. And if you want to have a Linux rig powered by a company that uses Linux throughout their entire infrastructure and have HTML5 access to the machine, that's DigitalOcean. So use our promo code LASTDigital. You can go deploy an Ubuntu rig, a Fedora rig, but if you're not, you could use it in production, but if you're not familiar with it, take the 2 months, use our promo code LASTDigital, and try out CoreOS. I think CoreOS is a huge deal, and if you want some proof of that, look at DockerCon from like 3 weeks ago. CoreOS came up, and within under a year, they got Red Hat, VMware, Docker, Cisco, all these Amazon, Microsoft, all these companies to come together and agree on a common spec for containers under Linux. There's a reason for that. Being able to update the underlying OS and keep the applications isolated and protected and performing the way you expect, that's obvious. And that's the way forward. CoreOS is all about that. You can go up to DigitalOcean right now. Use the promo code LASTDigital and try out CoreOS for a little while. Deploy your applications on, and it's going to be obvious why Red Hat and CentOS and OpenSUSE, and we're going to talk about that more in the show today, why they're all moving this direction. It's going to be obvious to you once you use CoreOS. And if you use the promo code LASTDigital, why not? because there's no risk. It's 2 months free, no credit card required. Go to DigitalOcean.com, use the promo code LastDigital. Now, they also have free BSD. They have Ubuntu LTS. They've got Fedora. They've got Debian. You can go deploy on production environments right now. Noah and I do that all the time. Noah, how many droplets do you have, do you think? Do you have a rough number?
Yeah, I've lost count. I know that they had a limit of 25, and I requested that they increase that and got my limit increased to 50. But I spin up droplets like this week. We were recording the segment for the show, and I needed to demo an example on a server. Well, that would have involved ordinarily me going downstairs, finding a spare one, putting it into a rack, finding it. Then you got to find all the cables and plug them all in. And then you got to find a hard drive and stuff. No, I went over to DigitalOcean.com.
Yep.
I spun up a droplet. I clicked on it. In fact, it happened so fast. And I used it and got done with it so fast, I forgot why I spun it up in the first place or even what I named it.
Yeah.
I had to log in this morning and look and be like, oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
I did that. I forgot about it because it doesn't cost me anything. And you can do hourly spin-ups, which is what this particular one was. So I'm not paying that monthly fee. I'm just I'm using it for a little bit, and then I'm done. Yeah. And I only pay for that.
It's so fast and so easy. I prefer to do it over spinning up a virtual machine on my own local box because you can get started in less than 55 seconds. And pricing plans start only $5 a month. They'll get you 512 megabytes of RAM, a 20 gigabyte SSD because they're all SSDs, one CPU, and a terabyte of transfer. And here's my favorite part too. DigitalOcean's got data center locations in New York, San Francisco, Singapore, Amsterdam, and Germany. And the one in Germany has got 40 gigabit E connections to each hypervisor. They're fastest SSDs yet. And here's what I love about this. I look like a baller. I look like I've got infrastructure in all of the major important points in all of the West. Like if you speak English, you get a fast download when you download one of the Unfiltered supporter components. I look like I'm some sort of baller with a massive infrastructure. My secret is DigitalOcean. I use the promo code LastDigital. I save $10 a month. And then when DigitalOcean rocks their amazing interface, which is the best interface for managing a virtual environment I have ever seen in the last 15 years, seriously. And it's web-based. I don't know how the hell they did it. I thought if you would have asked me the best, I would have said no. It has to be a native GTK application. You know, it's not. It's not. It
because
is DigitalOcean's
5 years
interface.
ago, when we didn't have VPS space, that's what you would have thought you would needed to leverage console control of the computer
without having to have like Java or ActiveX or whatever the crap that I would have had plugin I would have to have installed. No, it's all right there. And plus, now with their one-click installations, you can deploy things like GitLab, like I mentioned just a bit ago, or Ruby on Rails, or WordPress, or the entire LAMP stack. And then, of course, when you do something like the LAMP stack, it's like based on Ubuntu LTS, and you're subscribed to the Ubuntu LTS repos, so you're going to get all of the updates. So you're going to get a consistently patched, secured system. And they have local repos, so them downloads, they download crazy fast. And they have so many great tutorials. They're even hiring to have editors, and they even have open positions. Check out their open careers. Go to DigitalOcean.com. Use the promo code LastDigital. And a big thank you to DigitalOcean for sponsoring the Linux Action Show. It's just like so awesome now to have Linux infrastructure on demand as a Linux user after all of these years, as somebody who, like, if I'm going to deploy something, I'm going to deploy it on Linux and to not have to roll that on my own infrastructure every single time anymore. It's awesome. LastDigital. Thank you, DigitalOcean. All right, Noah, let's get into our desktop app picks. And YubiKey, it made me think of security a little bit. And I wanted to kind of have a desktop app pick that matched that theme. And I have not really used this next app pick for myself a lot, but I have used it a lot for communicating with other people. There was a Windows user who... It was a producer that we had worked with at one point who used Windows, and I needed to send him a whole bunch of text files, a whole bunch of Markdown files. It was like 55 megabytes of Markdown files that if I compressed it compressed down to like 350 kilobytes. But it was confidential, so I wanted to encrypt it, I wanted to secure it, and he wasn't super savvy. So I wanted him to be able to have a self-extracting file on his Windows box, even though my machine was a Linux box. Right? So there's a lot of moving parts here. I want it encrypted, I want it self-extracting, and I want something that's got a GUI so that way I can be lazy. And so that's where I found pzip. It's pzip, and it's really, really nice because it lets you basically compress to any of your favorite formats. I like 7-zip, but of course it does gzip, rar, tar, zip, and of course it can also unrar, and it has packages available for Windows. It may even have a Mac version, I'm not sure, but it definitely has a Linux version. And under Linux, it can create a self-extracting archive. With fairly good encryption, which I'm kind of a fan of. It's also available, another thing I like, in Qt or GTK. So depending on your desktop flavor, you get one, and it's also available in the Arch user repository. So without further ado, I'll show it to you. So here is the GTK version, and I'm looking at my picture files right now. So I've browsed. You might be familiar if you've seen any of the other proprietary file compression, like zip. So I've selected a few files right here, and I can go ahead and I can create a new archive. And what I love about this is here's an example of I can say where I want to put it. So I'm just going to say, let's say dirty pictures, even though they're just Star Trek pictures. It's dirtypictures.zip, right? Now it doesn't have to be a zip file either. It could be anything from a tar.gz to a 7-zip, or how about this one, a self-extracting 7-zip file or a self-extracting ARC file. Now this is extremely nice when you're dealing with basic Windows users, right? Because maybe I want to have this password protected, but I don't have a lot of reliability on the other end of my reception. It's not going to be the best protection possible, but my end user is a Windows user or my end user is a Linux user. This is an amazing application. It's pzip. It's a great way to set up a self-extraction archive that extracts on their own end that can be password protected, or it can use a key file. It can use a key file too, which is really nice. And I love it. I mostly use the built-in desktop environment extraction tools and compression tools, but really, Noah, if you want something that works across multiple desktops, so you and I often advocate if you're going to move somebody over from Windows to Linux, but you want to give them a really good tool. Mm-hmm. This is a perfect one. So one of the things I like a lot about pzip is it pulls in different types of encryption depending on what you want to do. And so whatever, I don't know if I would rely on this for the Snowden files, but if it's if it's a picture of my dick, I'm not as concerned because first of all, it's a pretty impressive dick, but second of all, if you want to really look at that, you can. So I would be comfortable using the encryption and the compression built into pzip. It's PEA zip. It's open source and it's available in Qt, GTK, and command line. Available also for BSD, Windows, and maybe the Mac. I'm not quite sure on that. Have you ever tried it?
I have not. I used to be concerned about RAR files and zip files and stuff back in the day when I had to move things at 1.4 megs because they had to fit on a floppy. Mm-hmm. At that point, I was concerned about RARing everything up and then dividing it out into different parts and moving things over. Nowadays, everything I do is in a tar.gz, and everyone from a Windows perspective is putting things into a zip file, and of course, I can unpack or repack either of those on Linux. But where this shines out to me is the encryption part of it. This seems like what this could be is a mediocre replacement for TrueCrypt, at least in the basic sense of keeping the honest people honest.
You got it, man. You got it. That's exactly why I love it. You nailed it. And it's actually fairly good encryption, and it's not very draconian about the implementation. It's here's the 3 boxes, answer these 3 questions, and then you send it to somebody, and then you hear, and then for you and I, what I would do is I would send you the file, and I'd be like, hey man, here's the password. And that's done. That's all we really need.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, Noah. So that's sort of a security desktop app pick. Now, all of us have a creative side. After we get super serious about our security, we got to unwind and enjoy a little bit of music. Now, Noah, I love this one because this is actually one that you use from time to time. It's called Hydrogen.
Yeah, so a hobby is I've been kind of involved in music my whole life. I kind of grew up with it, and so a lot of that has moved over to composing electronically, or at least recording electronically. And one of the nice things is if you're putting a piece together, you want to put something. The first thing you need is a good beat, and you can go and lay down a track on an electric drum set, or if you really want to spend some time, mic an acoustic drum set. It's a lot easier to use a sequencer. And of course, if I'm going to do it, it's going to be done on Linux. So I actually was playing with Hydrogen, and I've used it it's not the first time I've used it, but I was using it again this week, and I'm like, why haven't we talked about this on the show? This is actually a really great sequencer. And the thing that separates a good sequencer from a great sequencer, in fact, really what separates a good sequencer from a usable sequencer for me, is the ability to subdivide into very, very small increments. So a lot of sequencers will top out at I've seen some of them top out at 16ths of a note, and that's barely even usable. You want to go all the way up to 30 seconds, and I think Hydrogen will do 64ths. So you can subdivide up those notes, which obviously expands the amount of flexibility that the sequencer has, and you can do things like triplets and all those things. And actually, the demo you have, the guy actually does a really good job of laying down some pretty sick beats.
Yeah, and he's got some nice plugins too that work with this application as well, which is really nice. The Calf plugins. This is so like if I want like a nice beat or something like that. This is like it's not quite like GarageBand, or what is this, Noah?
Well, yeah. So let's say you want to compose a piece of electronic music. The first thing you need is a beat, and so this is how you would generate that. And then once you have this sequence, you can export this out and bring it into something like LMMS, and use LMMS to add and layer. Or if you wanted to do quote unquote traditional music, you could export the beat from Hydrogen out, bring it into something like Audacity or Ardour, and then record on top of that if you had an electric guitar or an acoustic guitar or something like that. But the nice thing about a sequencer over actually recording a beat is, so a drum beat is going to be a lot of times the same thing, very repetitive over and over and over again. And if you're a drummer, then you have to get that right. All 64 measures. With this, I get it right one time in the computer, and I just repeat, and then I add a fill in there, and it gives you the option to add. You can cycle between different sequences. So if you have one sequence that's your actual beat, and then if you have another that's a fill, and then you go back and maybe you had a bridge, you can have all of those identified, and then you can just click through them, and it'll play one. Then you say after 16 measures of this, then I want one fill, then I want the bridge, then I want to go back into the main beat, and I want that for another 16 measures while I do verse 2, and you can sequence all that out, and it takes a matter of minutes. It is a super cool, useful piece of software, and it deserves some attention.
Yeah, it definitely does deserve some attention. And they just had a post up. Well, they've been a while since they have any posts up, but go over to hydrogen-music.org. We'll have a link in the show notes if you want more, and give them a little attention and let them know we appreciate a project like this on the Linux desktop. This example, this is the perfect example of something we'd like to spotlight in the open source project to let you guys know. Sometimes, we get a bit of a stereotype out there about what's available on the Linux desktop, and then you see something like this and you're like, holy crap, that's way cooler than I realized the Linux desktop even had available for it, and we need to support projects like this. So you'll find a link in the show notes. They have a call out right there about 14 different ways to contribute to the project, and they haven't had a post in a long time since then, so let's give them a little love and see if maybe they can keep developing this amazing piece of software for the Linux desktop. But Noah, with the picks all done, you know what that means. We're all done with that. It's time for the news.
Hey, it's the news, and this episode is brought to you by
Ting.com. Go to last.ting.com. That way you get the Linux Action Show discount, and you let them know that you appreciate them supporting the Ting Show. Hey, Noah, you got a phone on you right now?
Of course I have a phone on me. I have my Galaxy S4. Of course, that's activated on Ting. But the newest phone in our house from Ting is actually my wife's Moto G2.
Nice, dude.
She killed her phone for the last time. She plugged in a charger. I don't necessarily blame her. My daughter likes to plug things in, but of course she doesn't get the USB port right, and so she just jams it in any which way she can.
Oh no!
So my wife went to plug her phone in, and she pulled it out, and actually she got a blister. It was so hot. The charger was. And I'm like, oh, that's not good. So I look at her phone, and sure enough, her phone is no longer able to charge. And then, a couple hours later, it just died. So I went on Ting.com, looked for a phone that I could get as quickly as possible. Yeah. Of course, this has to happen over the 4th of July weekend, so it's going to be a delayed shipping.
Oh, I hadn't heard about this.
But Ting got it out. They got it out right away. So she got her Motorola G2. It came in on Tuesday, I think.
That's a great pick. How did you decide the G2, by the way?
Well, so she doesn't do anything even remotely powerful on her computer. She uses it for contacts, she uses her Kindle, and she makes phone calls and Telegram, and that is it. So she could get away with the least powerful smartphone. The problem is, I want something that has good build quality, and when I have to use it to set something up, I don't want to sit there and wait for a crappy processor or really slow phone to load or to work.
Because it's just frustrating for you as the person having to work on it.
Right. So the Motorola G2 ships with Lollipop.
Yeah.
It has a Snapdragon.
Yeah.
And it actually, it's a really nice phone.
Well, the build quality of the Moto G alone feels like it's worth all of the price. Like you're like, what's left? Like I feel like all of the price I paid for this, because it's under $100, isn't it? For
200. It's 200. It's 179. Okay. Maybe even cheaper than that. I think because I got expedited shipping, so I think total price is $170.
You can get the first gen Moto G for $91 from Ting.
And what's the second one? I think the second one is like $129, and then I paid for overnight shipping. So, but when I pulled it out, it feels almost identical to the Nexus, even in that the little screen has that little curve to it. If you've ever turned it sideways, it feels a lot like the Nexus. It looks like a lot like the Nexus. And the thing that she likes about it, and I was asking her how she liked it, she said the thing that stands out to her, the biggest improvement to her, other than the fact that she says Lollipop, is super intuitive. She said that she felt like she was fighting Android up until she got to Lollipop, and now she goes, I pick up my phone and I wiggle it and I can take a picture. And she goes, there's little things like that she has just figured out from using it.
So the Motos have some of the best build qualities. And so, by the way, when you buy a phone from Ting, it's unlocked, it's yours. There's no contract. You go to last.ting.com, you're going to get a $25 discount, and then you just pay for usage. Your minutes, your messages, and your megabytes, that's what you pay for. And then any local tax is going to depend on your state. And that's it. Now, Noah, you have the S4.
I do.
And dude, I'm mad respect. That's a pretty solid phone. You deserve the S6. You really,
I know I do.
You really do.
I know I do.
And I've got the S6 on Ting right here. I've got the S6 Edge on Ting, and dude, this is the best smartphone. So I have a sci-fi theme installed right now. It's got the fingerprint reader, so I don't even have to enter my passcode. If I want, I just put my thumb on the home screen. It unlocks it for me. I've got a sci-fi theme on here, and I actually even left the Samsung launcher on this thing. The camera, check this out, dude. So here's the home button. You press this, and it launches the camera immediately within 2 seconds. Look at that. Yeah. How slick is that? So I mean, when you've got kids and you want to take a picture, that is. I mean, like, I don't know how you beat that. This is a really great phone. And here's the best part. Ting just takes GSM phones. We'll go over to their BYOD page and find out. But they have a CDMA network and GSM network that they're fully compatible with. So you may be able to bring a device you've already got. If that's the case, they'll give you a $25 credit on your plan. Now, here's something else that's great. If you want hotspot and tethering, you just turn it on. And they have no hold customer service. You call them at 1-855-TING-FTW anytime between 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. East Coast. And a real human being answers the phone. Now, I've been a Ting customer for about 2 years and change now. And about, I should actually look it up, but I think about a year and a half in, I realized I spend so much time every single week trying to figure out the best Android app to suggest to you guys. Because, Android's a Linux platform, blah, blah, blah. And then I realized... So one of the things I love about Ting is when you call their customer service, 1-855-TING-FTW, it's real Android geeks that answer the phone, or iOS, depending on or Windows phone. I'm sorry if that's your phone. And so, why am I spending all of my time doing this? And so then I realized Ting does this already. They have an app pick. I want to roll it for you this week. It's Ting's app pick of the week. And seriously, if you're a Ting customer or not, this is going to be beneficial for you.
If you've ever wished there was a Ting in the banking world, the choice is simple. I'm Kyra, and this is the Ting app of the week. Simple is banking the way it should be. They keep things, simple. Simple offers the tools to take control of your money, your spending, and your savings. If you're not yet using Simple, you can request an invite within the app. Once logged in, your spending is tracked through the Activity tab. Transactions are displayed in a timeline. Tap an event to get more info. Here you'll find useful information like the spending category and who you bought from. The Goals tab is where you save for a rainy day, or for that Ting phone you've had your eye on. Name it, enter the amount you're looking to save, and set the date for your future goal. Simple crunches the numbers to tell you how much you need to save each day. Simple's Save to Spend tool keeps your saving goals in mind and gives you an allowance of sorts. Where Current Balance tells you how much money you have, Save to Spend tells you how much of that money you can afford to be without. You can snap a picture of a check to do a deposit and do all the standard stuff you'd expect to do with online banking. Pay bills, transfer funds, that kind of thing. If you're tired of the same old banking, Simple is a breath of fresh air. Grab the app, available on Android and iOS, and see for yourself. Thanks for watching, and see you next week.
So I was actually part of the invitation program when Simple first launched, and I've been a Simple customer ever since, and I've been super happy with it.
Is it a whole bank, Noah?
Yeah, it's a whole bank. It used to be invitation only. I assume now that they're demoing, you can just sign up. But yeah, you sign up, you get a bank account, you get a routing number, you put money in. But the nice thing is when I spend money out of on my Simple card, like I swipe my Simple debit card, I get a push notification on my phone. You spent X amount of dollars here, and you can set it up to steal money from you. So let's say you want to buy. It sounds crazy, but listen, hear me out. Let's say I want to buy that S6. And I don't have the money for it, and I say, "All right, Simple." Simple will notice that I don't notice when I spend $1.50 or $2 over or under, because who notices that? It will steal $2 a week from me, or $2 every 4 days, or $2 every whatever, and put it into a hidden account, and then I'll get a notification. It'll say your goal of an S6 has been reached, and you have $650. Here you go. Go buy your S6. So it'll like steal little bits of money from you and try to save money for you. It's really cool.
I actually think that could work for somebody like me.
Yeah, right. Because I never get to the point. I can't spend big amounts of money. Like I can't go and be like, oh, I'm going to take $600 out and go spend it. But if I lose $2 or $3 here or there, that I don't really notice, and that adds up. It adds up really quickly. It turns out. But yeah, I love Simple.
Thank you to Ting, last.ting.com. All right, Noah, let's talk about this. So. One of my, I don't know, I think it because it intersects with politics and technology and futurism. I have, in sci-fi, really, I have found the Snowden leaks to be something that scratches a particular itch in me in a way that I have investigated and read about this like a maniac. And I have followed this so closely. And during all of the Snowden revelations, I have fantasized and dreamt up how this system could be built based on what I know about from log collection. And I know this sounds really weird, but if you'll bear with me for a second, if you think about it in an enterprise environment where you have thousands of devices that are logging every second, that is just an insane amount of data to process. And then to be able to extract from that data actual actionable events that need to be investigated and that aren't just noise is a very complicated system and process. And then to be able to prove to auditors, to FDIC auditors and management that you are doing due diligence, you are researching these things, is on top of that an enormous task. And I guess now we call this big data. Back then I just called it, holy shit, I got too much data. I don't know what we call it now. Yeah. So I've always been extremely fascinated by any system that could, capture 3 days of the internet, process 3 days of the internet, collect basic key triggers like things that are encrypted or certain catchphrases or certain destinations, extract that and store it into a database and make it searchable later on. Well, that's exactly what logging does, and that's exactly what the NSA has done to surveil the American public. And we're talking about X-Keyscore. X-Keyscore is a system that sits on top of PRISM. PRISM is a system that collects data over the internet. They literally split the fiber optic cable on the internet. You can find out more about this online. But so what they do is they split the fiber optic cable, they collect a secondary copy of everything that's transferred over the internet, and they collect this in a 3-day buffer. A 3-day buffer is what we know of as of about 2008, 2011. It may be more now, but we don't really know for sure. And really, how do you know how many? That doesn't matter. But what we do know is they collect 3 days or so of the internet, and then they parse that for information that would be suspicious. Maybe it's terrorism related, or maybe it's some sort of insider trading that they would find to be fascinating, or who knows what they would want, right? And but in order to search all of this, you need a program to go select these individual bits of information, and that program is called X-Keyscore. Well, this week, Noah, we got some very interesting information about what actually powers X-Keyscore. And turns out, Red Hat servers, MySQL, Bash scripts, and Apache. And this got Red Hat in a whole shit ton of controversy this week. Like, Red Hat had to make public statements about how they didn't know they were working with the NSA, and all the speculation. Now, before we get to what Richard Stallman had to say about all of this, as somebody who deploys a lot of Red Hat, as somebody who deploys a lot of CentOS, and somebody who had to watch this, Noah, did you catch anything from the news? Or did you have any clients that said anything to you? What was your impression?
Yeah, well, so this week, I mean, not to derail the story or anything, but this week was primarily occupied with fixing OpenSSL.
Right.
But no, I guess the way I look at this is Red Hat is in business to make money. I know, because I have contracts, is that the government pays their bills. So if the government comes to you for a contract and wants to use your software,
Red Hat says we have no idea if the NSA is using our software. And of course they wouldn't, right? It'd be the federal government. And of course the federal government is probably a huge customer.
Right, as they should be, and they should treat them just like they treat every other client. Now, if Red Hat if it ever got to a point where people were accusing Red Hat of giving the NSA special access to things or giving the NSA backdoors to things, that's an entirely different story. But as far as if the NSA is using Red Hat, do I think that it requires some justification or from no.
Thank you. So this is where I stand on it too, and this is where Richard Stallman stands on it as well, is you cannot be an advocate for open source. You cannot be an advocate for free software. You cannot be for FLOSS, for Libre software. You cannot be an advocate for that and then have an issue where the NSA wants to contribute to SE Linux. You can't
actually, really what you mean to say is, and then dictate who can use it and who can't use it because you don't agree with what they're doing with it.
Because, that seems so obvious. I didn't even want to start with that because that's so freaking obvious on its face. I didn't even feel like I should open with that. I wanted to open with code contributions. I wanted to open with community contributions because even that level seems obvious to me. Now, here's what we have. We have the option of what we want to accept. Who do we want to take code from? Who do we want to follow? Who do we want to listen to? As users, that's our option. But as a community, if it's an open source license and we're saying contribute, then we have to allow contributions from anyone, and that's essentially where Richard Stallman came down as well. And so I found it sort of... I found it to be like fair weather open source advocates this week. Those that that took up pitchforks and went after Red Hat, and those who went after Linux for being used at the NSA. In fact, I got a ribbing from a FreeBSD user, not anybody we know, but just from an email. I got an email from a FreeBSD user who was giving me a ribbing for like, well, look where your GPL has gotten you now, which is such crap. And
it really is.
So here's where I want to zoom out, and I just want to say, would you rather they're using Windows?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that would make everything better if they were using proprietary software to spy on. Then I would feel better at night. No, you know what? Honestly, use Linux. At least if you're going to spy on me, use a good tool to do it.
Yeah. And Richard Stallman. So I'm sorry, Swamp Thing. I'm going to get your name wrong. But I love him. He has great stuff. He's over at itworld.com. He did an interview with Richard Stallman, and Richard Stallman basically pointed him to a previous write-up that he has done before on the topic, where he says, this is the thing about free software, and he says that Richard Stallman basically agrees that anyone can use this, and I do too. I wish it wasn't the NSA, but at the same time, I don't want them using something else. So.
Yeah, I just don't want them to do it. I don't want them violating the Constitution at all, with or without free software. But so I guess that extrapolates. Like, we can expand that far further than the NSA. If you take the stance that the NSA shouldn't use the software because those are bad things and they shouldn't do bad things with free software, who gets to decide what's good and what's bad? And then so if I decide that if I create a project and then I decide that I don't agree with people who wear red shirts, can I make a stipulation that people that wear red shirts can't use my software? It doesn't. It goes against the very grain of open source, saying who can and can't use software.
Yeah, very much so. And it's also in a way a sick testament. Like when you got to build a system that can handle crazy amounts of data at the scale nobody else has ever seen, go Linux.
Nobody wants to ever say anything good about the NSA, and I think this article, the first one, I don't know if you don't have it pulled up, I do, but it has the other article that's in the show notes. The NSA was a key contributor, in fact, one of the driving forces that brought along SE Linux. So it's not like we are not getting anything back out. I mean, we can argue all day of if the cost outweighs the ends justify the means, that kind of thing. But it's not like we're not getting anything out of this. I mean, the NSA has provided meaningful contributions, or things have come about from the contributions of the NSA, and no doubt the contracts and the money that Red Hat takes in from the federal government.
Now that's making me feel real weird. No, it's making me feel real weird. I think,
but it's a reality.
Yeah.
We probably wouldn't. I'll go as far to say this. I don't think we would have SE Linux if it wasn't for the NSA and the government.
I want to make one more comment, and it's not related to what you said, and it's not really Linux related, but I personally need to make this comment on air. One of the things that extremely bothers me about this discussion that you and I just had is that we talked about constitutional violations, we talked about monitoring American citizens. The reality is, what they're doing to people outside the United States is far more egregious and aggressive than anything they're doing to us inside the United States, and I'm not okay with that either. And I don't have a way to express that properly, and I'm sorry that somebody that's the representative of our government is violating your privacy that way. We take it seriously, and that's why one of the things we talk about on this show is how to keep your private stuff private. And it's a mandate and a charge we will continue to pursue. And so we are very cognizant of the fact that this has a much bigger impact on people outside the United States. We are not dismissing that aspect of the conversation.
So that's might be a happy note to end on. Actually, is that the bright side of this, the happy side to this is. This really only affects people that aren't in the know to a certain extent. If you are careful, if you pay attention, if you watch Linux Action Show every week, the tools we have the tools available to us to make it. I'm not saying it's a full-on guarantee.
No.
I'm not.
We
saying
are now living in a sci-fi movie. If you are aware, if you are hip to open source and encryption and privacy tools, and you can protect yourself.
Right, and to some degree, it's low-hanging fruit, right? They're going to go after the people that that are easy to get. And the problem with encryption is people only use it to protect private stuff, which just further perpetuates this cycle of you only encrypt things that you're trying to hide.
Yeah, it's like flagging it.
Right, and it validates this perception of, well, he encrypted it because he wanted to hide it. No, listen, encrypt everything. Encrypt your entire hard drive. Encrypt everything. Don't just use private tabs in Firefox when you're looking at porn. Use it all the time. Don't just use porn. You
can't say that. You can't say that because you don't do that.
Some of those things aren't practical, and putting Tor at your router level isn't necessarily practical either. But the reality is, when you open up to Google search something and you want to find out where the nearest cafe is, there's no reason you can't do that in a private tab. And most people don't.
Free software.
That program, although it may be attractive, is really a trap.
Try out DuckDuckGo. Yeah, and we don't need to go farther than that. I think people know. Watch the Unfilter show if you want to hear it on a weekly basis. But yeah, I want to talk about OpenSUSE because I did some reading on this story. I've been trying to wrap my head around what is happening in OpenSUSE because remember before the previous release, we heard we're not going to have a lot of people working on it. We're going to work on infrastructure stuff, and you're like, well, what does that mean? And then they got evergreen releases, and they have the tumbleweed. What the hell is going on at OpenSUSE? And so, as somebody who used to buy every single box release, I follow with some interest. And there was a fantastic write-up that I missed on the 19th over on LWN. Well, and now it's actually available to the general public, too. That's another reason I'm talking about it now. And it gave us a chance to not only digest what's happening, but maybe forecast a little bit what's going to go on. So OpenSUSE has some major changes coming to it. And I think they're absolutely fascinating. And if you think about it, it's even showed up in our reviews. OpenSUSE has frequently struggled with its identity. Who the hell is this distribution targeting? Are they developers? Are they people who want really current stuff? Or are they people that want really stable stuff for the enterprise? And this has been something that you've heard in our reviews on, and I've honestly felt like maybe Chris is just banging this drum too much. However, Richard Brown, who sits on the chair of the OpenSUSE group, he also agrees that OpenSUSE struggles with a core identity issue. And this is the beginning, this is the core issue facing OpenSUSE right now, the root of the problem we're going to talk about today. And this is from Richard Brown.
When we're talking about the OpenSUSE regular release, after 9 years now, I've always felt that the regular release for OpenSUSE has kind of had itself stuck in the middle, being pulled in two directions. On one side, we've always had this pull from the community, from a good chunk of our users, for more new stuff. The latest of everything, always new, newest of everything in the OpenSUSE stack. And on the other side, we have an equally sizable chunk of users who want everything to be more stable, more reliable, not breaking all the time, and in some cases not updating all the time. They just want a platform to actually run their stuff on.
Doesn't that sound like almost the core debate you and I fall into all the time? I'm like, rolling. Let's use Arch in the studio. You're like, man, I'm not going to put that in the studio unless we can put Ubuntu on it. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to let you put another Ubuntu computer in this studio. It has to be rolling. Is this not a dichotomy that you and I get caught in all the time?
Yes.
And as an enterprise guy, you must run into this too. I mean, you deploy CentOS constantly.
No. Yes, well, yeah, we do, but I don't have anyone on the other end saying that we should that we should be using rolling releases. Right. Everyone seems to be okay with using stable.
Exactly, because there's a huge market for it, right? There's a very sensible market for that. Well, so this is the dichotomy that OpenSUSE finds them in, because here's the issue. Tumbleweed is their big success story recently. Tumbleweed's their most recent success story. Tumbleweed is their fast-moving distribution built on the rolling release model. Like other rolling release distributions, Tumbleweed does without fixed releases. Instead, it regularly incorporates updated software as it becomes ready. The number of Tumbleweed users has been growing at a steady rate. Somewhere right now, Noah, around 300,000 active monthly users of Tumbleweed, 400,000. So somewhere in the ballpark of people that watch the Linux Action Show are running Tumbleweed. Maybe a little less. There's more people watching the Linux Action Show that run Tumbleweed, but not many more. Like, it's somewhere in that range. To give you a perspective, this is how big Tumbleweed has gotten. That's a pretty big deal for monthly watchers, right? And so Tumbleweed, as a result, has become the focus of a lot of developers' attention in the OpenSUSE project. Why wouldn't it? If you have some big new hit that in several months has picked up almost 500,000 users, well, hell yeah, you're going to spend some time focusing on that. That's a huge deal, especially for a distribution like OpenSUSE that's been strained within relevance for a long time now. And so as a result, OpenSUSE had a large number of developers focus on that, and a very small amount of people focused on making OpenSUSE 13.2 an actually successful release. Very few people actually worked on the last release of OpenSUSE. The distribution seems to be caught in an unappealing middle point. It does not move as quickly as Tumbleweed, but it still updates often enough to put off users looking for an enterprise distro, sort of like Fedora does as well. So Richard was setting out to sort of try to solve this problem. What do we do? Do we make Tumbleweed the focus of OpenSUSE? Do we just forget those people that want the stable release? Well, luckily for Richard and the OpenSUSE project, there happens to be another alternative that came around. There's a component about this. I mentioned Fedora as sort of a comparison. Well, the comparison to Fedora, right, would be Red Hat Enterprise Linux as another sort of you have Fedora and you have Red Hat Enterprise Linux. With OpenSUSE, you have OpenSUSE and you have SUSE Enterprise Linux, SLE, or as they call it, SLE. Now, one of the things that's interesting, Noah, right, and if I'm understanding, is everybody kind of knows a lot of times what gets developed in Fedora eventually makes it up into Red Hat Enterprise Linux in some form or another, refined and perfected. And if one of the reasons you're a Fedora user is that very reason, right?
Absolutely, yeah. So, well, at least that was the case a while ago. We've gotten to a point now that Fedora and Red Hat have gotten so far apart that you can't. It's gotten a little more complicated. But
yes. Now, this is not necessarily, though, the same dichotomy between OpenSUSE and SUSE Enterprise Linux. There's more of a gap. In fact, they even call it a gap. There's more of a gap between the two distributions. And they're about to do the reverse of what Fedora and CentOS and Red Hat Enterprise Linux do. Sort of instead, you're going to have the option to have Tumbleweed for development releases, and then OpenSUSE is going to actually be based on sources from the enterprise distro, sort of the opposite of Fedora.
So this is sort of the long-standing story of, SUSE wanting to work with OpenSUSE, collaborate on OpenSUSE, do all the innovation in the OpenSUSE project, and then be able to use it as part of the main SLE distribution. So as we've heard now on the mailing list and with Marcus's presentation, the big announcement that sort of SUSE wanted to say to here is all of the latest SLE sources for SUSE Linux Enterprise 12 are now in the OBS, available for OpenSUSE to build with. They're there. And that also includes the maintenance updates. So as SLE 12 gets maintenance updates, they will also appear in OBS. And OpenSUSE can now actually build a community distribution with enterprise sources as part of it.
So it's sort of a little bit of the reverse. You could have OpenSUSE built on the enterprise components, so you might feel a little more comfortable deploying OpenSUSE in a production environment. And then remember also, Noah, you've got the OBS, the Open Build Service, that could play a significant role in bringing modern applications into this. And something else that's interesting about this is OpenSUSE won't necessarily be committed to the SUSE enterprise packages. They can individually choose to replace the enterprise packages with more modern packages from Tumbleweed if it seems appropriate, but they feel there's going to be a pretty big cost to payoff ratio there, so they're going to have to choose pretty particularly. But the idea here is, so you got three main tracks now, the way I see it. Tumbleweed for anybody that wants a reasonable distro with modern functionality that actually reflects what's happening in the Linux world. That's Tumbleweed. And then you got OpenSUSE for any of you that are scared by software updates and you don't want to break your production environment. Extremely reasonable. And then you've got SUSE Enterprise Linux for any of you that want all of that same stuff, but you want it for more years and you want to pay a lot of money, and something that has the enterprise gold standard, something that has a lot of support infrastructure around it, something that snaps into management infrastructures. Then you have this full range now. So on your desktop, on your laptop, like a human being, you can use a reasonable distro like Tumbleweed, and then on your work machine where you have to fit inside a box, you can use OpenSUSE, and then on your enterprise rig where you have to make sure your ass isn't going to get fired, you can run your enterprise distro. It's a pretty nice broad spectrum.
So it seems to me that a couple things are backwards. So first of all, I don't quite follow the advantage of taking from the enterprise and pulling it back into OpenSUSE. So, and I say that for a number of reasons. The first is the enterprise release is where the capital is. That is where they're getting paid to produce a particular product. So that's where everything has to be refined and stopped, and we got all the bugs sorted out. That, to me, that's what the enterprise release is. And then the thing that is appealing about this to me is this idea that OpenSUSE fills a niche for me that in this scenario that Red Hat just doesn't accommodate, and that is there is nothing in the Red Hat world. There is nothing between the crazy bleeding edge people that want everything to break constantly, and the totally stable where everything works constantly. I need something in the middle where something is a little bit newer packages, but is designed for enterprise, like an enterprise. And I was talking to the Red Hat people. I called it an enterprise desktop, not a workstation, not a server, but a desktop operating system, enterprise desktop operating system, much like Ubuntu.
So,
and Red Hat doesn't.
So here's the thing, Noah. I completely agree. You're 100% right. It is completely backwards. And here's the fundamental issue: is it is a function of the way the business is set up and not a function of what the user needs. And what I mean by that is the reason they're doing it this way is because from a finances standpoint, from a risk management standpoint, from a this is what makes us money, at the end of the day, you can philosophize about, oh my God, it'd be amazing to have this brilliant community that contributes to this OpenSUSE distribution, and then we take their inspired genius ideas and we coalesce it into this enterprise distribution that we sell for thousands of dollars. In reality, you have 100 engineers, 200 engineers, 1,000, whatever it is. They have to focus on the product that makes you money. So when you're paying a developer $50 an hour, $30 an hour, whatever it is, they're going to work on your product that makes money. That's SUSE Enterprise Linux. Fair and square. That's what makes them money. That's what they're going to spend their R&D on. That means all of the packages, all of the refining, all of the bug fixes, all of the community interference, all of the going between an OEM, a hardware OEM, and OpenSUSE, all of that happens not at the OpenSUSE level, but at the SUSE Enterprise level, because that's where the money is. So what they have to do then is they have to take that investment at the SUSE Enterprise level and they have to reinvest it back at the OpenSUSE level. Kind of a neat idea. It makes OpenSUSE more stable. Hey. But in reality, Noah, is it completely negates the benefit of what Fedora brings, where Fedora gives something, not only time for projects and technologies to sort of mature and develop, Systemd, Pulse Audio, Network Manager, SE Linux, all of this has had time to mature and develop and have people like yourself get familiar with it in Fedora before it hit the enterprise release. That will completely be gone with this model that SUSE is going with, which doesn't make any sense unless you look at it from a completely pragmatic business expense standpoint. If you look at it from what's best for the community, go ahead.
I don't even think, I think from a business perspective, it doesn't make sense. I think from
because look, at the end of the day, that's what they've got to spend their money on. It's like, yes, from a like, oh man, if I had billions of dollars and I could invest in the long term, I would go the Red Hat route. But if I'm like some subsidiary of like a Attachmate or some company that barely gives a shit about me anyways, then I've really got to work with very limited resources and limited money, and I've got to decide where am I going to spend those resources, and I'm going to spend those resources making sure that my enterprise product is as good as I say it is. And that means that's where all the developers go.
I disagree. I think that if you have limited resources, it is twice as important for you to put as many of those resources into backing your community, so that you can use the resources that the community leverages to make a better enterprise product. If you're going to pay a developer and he's going to make some changes to the software, make those changes in OpenSUSE, and then if it works in OpenSUSE, then put it into your stable enterprise product. Don't have people pegging around inside of a product that people are paying for and making changes there. But that doesn't make any sense.
Dude, Tumbleweed's going to solve all that. Tumbleweed will solve all that.
Not though. So you're paying developers to work in Tumbleweed, or you're paying developers to work in your enterprise distro?
Tumbleweed, you get to capitalize on the enthusiasm, right? So that way your money gets spent on the enterprise product, but you get to capitalize on enthusiasm with Tumbleweed.
Yeah. This entire business model seems broken to me, and not only does it seem broken, but I think it's a particularly dangerous route to go for a company that doesn't seem to have. And I don't mean to be offensive about this, but doesn't seem to have any huge competitive advantage. And I'm open to being wrong. Please prove me wrong. Somebody go over to JupiterBroadcasting.com, click on the Linux section show from the dropdown, click on the contact link, and tell me what OpenSUSE offers that I can't get from either Ubuntu, Red Hat, or any of the derivatives there.
Not as somebody who used to recommend to deploy SUSE Enterprise Linux at all of my clients over Red Hat Enterprise Linux, I now am no longer quite as clear as to what the advantage is. So, for example, containerization is a huge, huge deal. Now, SUSE has sort of been following that, but it's only been the last major update they just had where they're like, SUSE is now container ready. Cool. In 2014, like this is 2015, you're just now kind of officially rolling out Docker support? Way to kind of not be relevant at all. Like I could have rolled my own distribution and hired a contractor to support that with Ubuntu 14.04 and had container support a year ago. Like how is that a competitive product anymore?
Yeah, there are small things that I really like about OpenSUSE. So, for example, I think they did a really good job implementing KDE. I think that YAST is really cool. I think that's a great way to get started with administration.
You know what? You're totally right. No, all those points have been so totally valid for like 7 years now. And those are the same 7 points. We've all every time we shit on OpenSUSE, you and I sit here and we say, but here's the good things. They've got YAST and it's German and KDE. And like we're like
and the open build service,
and they do good upstream work, but the reality is SUSE Enterprise is where they're making their money. I don't want you to sugarcoat this. Yeah, we're going to get a lot of bad feedback for it, but that's why people listen to this show. The reality is it's not a very impressive distribution anymore, but I think what they're working on, to be honest with you, I actually think is very refreshing. I think the idea of taking a little bit of a tweak approach of Fedora and saying, you know what, instead OpenSUSE is going to have the most stable stuff. And you know what? It could be very smart because I'm not willing to run Fedora in production in the studio. I'm not willing to deploy Fedora on a VPS. I love what those guys are doing. I respect Matthew and I respect everybody there at the project. But at the end of the day, I'm not going to run something that only has support for like half a year, really, realistically, because once I get everything set up, by the time I'm willing to deploy a distribution, it's 6 months in, right? And then it's got it's 6 months to maybe 18 months of support after that. That's a joke. I don't got time for that. Ain't nobody got time for that. I'm just going to put 14.04 on there. Now, if OpenSUSE can come along and offer me the open build service, that way I can have fresh versions of Mumble, I can have fresh versions of OwnCloud, I can have fresh versions of BitTorrent Sync, I can have fresh versions of Plex, all supplied by the OpenSUSE build service on a server that's getting packages from the enterprise distribution. You might laugh at that, dude, nice. But I think in the VPS world, it could make a lot of sense. So I think where they're at right now is a bit of a train wreck, a bit of a clown show. It's a bit unfortunate after 9-10 years. They're this far along, and this is all we got. But at the same time, when I look at the new world of VPSs, I think, actually, I could see me deploying an OpenSUSE VPS version 42 or whatever it's going to be.
Was going to be my next question is, so it seems like in order for us to come down on a really positive note, it seems like it has to be qualified with, I could see myself, blah, 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 but not, I will switch to blah, blah, blah. And no. I'm the same way.
Exactly.
Here's what would happen. If OpenSUSE or SUSE or all of them together, they come out with a totally bleeding edge thing that I can use to test software, and then they give me a good solid desktop that I can use that's the community sponsored version kind of a thing, and then I have an enterprise version. That model I could get behind, but it was short, and that would actually probably be a strong pull away from things like Red Hat and Ubuntu, because it would solve the things that I go to Ubuntu for and the things I go to Red Hat for, all with one distro.
Right.
But short of that happening, and that is clearly not the track that they're on, despite having the frameworks to do that. That's not the track that they're going down. Short of that, it's just not compelling to me.
That's kind of where I'm at too. All right, so this next story grabs my interest. Not only has it gotten a lot of traction over the last 2 weeks that I've been watching the story, but also it could be a sign for things to come. Canonical has partnered with Lenovo to launch an Ubuntu-powered ThinkPad, the L450, in India. Now, here's what's interesting about this. So the specs, that's not the interesting part. It's got a Core i3 or i5 processor paired with a Radeon R5 M2040 with 2 gigabytes of RAM. It's also got an Intel Iris in it, 5500. 4 gigabytes of computer RAM, a 500 gigabyte spinning Rust, 14-inch display, 1280 by 720. 1280 by 720.
Yeah. Wow.
Now, this is... so a couple things, though, that are good about this story. I like the way they word this. Lenovo announced this. I like that. Let's start with that. Lenovo announced this. Number 2, Lenovo announced starting in India and starting with the L450 series. Those are all good things, Noah. Starting in India, starting with this model, and announced by Lenovo, that could mean this could go big. Too bad it's such a lackluster product.
So let's start. We got to talk about something on the show. And that is that, so I have been a ThinkPad fan for a long time. My first ThinkPad was the 755C, and I've owned practically every model, at least every generation after that. I've used ThinkPads forever, and I've always really liked them. I've always really thought, especially when IBM owned them, that they're a really solid business class tool. But there's something that I've become aware of in the ThinkPad and the Lenovo lineup in general that seems to get absolutely no attention from the Linux community. If you talk to anyone at any Linux con, they praise ThinkPads like no tomorrow.
Oh, yeah.
Everyone is a ThinkPad fan. ThinkPad. If you run Linux and you don't have a ThinkPad, then you're an idiot. And what has really started to, and I caught on to this a while, actually with Angela's computer, and then I've seen it perpetuated numerous times, and now I realize it's every freaking laptop made by Lenovo, and nobody is talking about that. And that is, they whitelist the wireless cards that are in those computers. So if you buy a ThinkPad, and you want to upgrade your wireless card, you can't do it. If you put a different wireless card into the computer and you turn it on, it says, this isn't the wireless card that shipped with your computer. Take it out. It doesn't even let you post. And then, if that isn't bad enough, Lenovo publishes this ridiculous article, or somebody from Lenovo published this ridiculous article that said, all you have to do is unsolder the EEPROM off the motherboard, and then you just plug it into this serial
Corky
connector.
in the chat room's like, dude, all you got to do is mod the BIOS. It's no big deal.
It's not that big of a deal. You plug the serial thing in after you make this little cable and solder these pins on, and then you flash this different firmware on, and then you just solder it back onto the motherboard and it'll work. And Q5 Sis and I were sitting in a hotel room because he was having a problem with this ThinkPad, and he was trying to switch his wireless card, and then he hit the bug, and I'm like, son of a gun, that's like the 4th ThinkPad this month that I've seen have that problem. And then we looked into it, and it's like every laptop by Lenovo has this. And you ask people that buy ThinkPads, and they come up with all sorts of excuses of why that doesn't matter. And I'm like, how does that not matter? We wouldn't tolerate this from any other company. If Apple did this, I would rant about it every single week for the next year straight.
Exactly.
But Lenovo does this, and nobody cares. Nobody cares. And so let's start with that. That is absolutely, totally, there is absolutely no justification for that. If you want to say that they can't warranty computers because you changed the wireless card, fine. If you want to say you can't open the bottom of the computer because that voids the warranty, fine. But do not nerf the BIOS so that I can't install a different wireless card into my laptop. That, to me, is completely unacceptable. And I still like ThinkPads. I still think they're a good computer. Yeah. But that is a huge caveat and a huge, huge ding on the ThinkPad line. And everyone that goes to buy it should be aware that they are totally handicapping you from making fundamental changes to your computer. There are many things I change inside my laptop, but the hard drive, the memory, and the wireless card are 3 big ones.
I've swapped them numerous times. People drool all over Lenovo. Because Lenovo is able to write checks on IBM's name. And I understand. So here's the thing. It is painfully obvious to me that this laptop is targeted at the market in India that doesn't have a lot of money to spend. How do I know that? Because of the specs. You see, I am able to figure that out because of the specs. And I still think it's a little disappointing, because here's the other thing I know they could do. They could have a similarly spec'd computer with better specs, but also running Ubuntu. They could ship in the US. And it just drives me crazy. Or Europe would be fine, or Canada. I don't care. Just ship it somewhere that I could get my hands on it for us. And the fact that they continually, here's why it bothers me. it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy with these vendors. They keep shipping these.
Yes.
They keep shipping these piece of crap computers with these low specs in these third world countries or new markets or emerging markets or whatever you want to call it. They keep shipping these piece of crap computers and going, well, they sell pretty good there. Well, they sell okay there. Yeah. We sold 1 million there. Why is it that the best, thinnest, with the best GPU and the best CPU and the fattest SSD and the best case and the greatest screen with a high resolution, why once are they not once trying to ship that in the US? Ship it as a full-fledged product on their front page. Put it up there. Take some marketing shots of it. Maybe even run an ad. I understand this is a product for India. That's great for India. Good for them. How about the rest of the world gets an opportunity to also show that we would like to buy a product like this? Because people like me would like to buy something like this, and people like Noah's clients would like to buy something like this. And if we had a high-end product we could recommend to people, it would probably start to sell. But nobody that has the name HP, Dell, or Lenovo is doing this.
That's because they see Linux as an experiment. It's a cute little project on the side that maybe we'll dabble in a little bit. And that's one of the reasons why, when you'll notice when I went to do the segment, for our main segment this week, I sat down with a System 76 because it's the only computer that I can pull out of the bag and know 100% that there are no unknown variables because they commit to it 100%, as compared to everything else. All these other companies, they basically treat it like an experiment. Now, I do have to give Lenovo this little bit of credit. Okay. After that huge rant, I will give them this much. I have yet to pick up a Lenovo product that I couldn't just install Linux on, and it worked. I like to be able to swap, even when I couldn't swap the Broadcom card out of Angela's computer.
But it had issues after updates. It had issues after updates.
Yeah, that's true. But I bought the exact same model based on the experience that she had, and I gave it to another friend who we put
and you
a
catch
bunch
a different
on
update
and
cycle,
they did not get bit by that update.
Right, because you catch it 1 day later and it's fine.
Yeah.
So I love that they're shipping more, but as I opened this story with, and now I want to close this story with, what I do like about this story is they said beginning in India and beginning with this laptop. So what that tells me is if they get some interest in a reasonably cost laptop, maybe they'll expand it from there. I would love to see something shipping for Lenovo US and Lenovo UK and Lenovo Canada that actually has Linux on it. And I'm not just talking something like a Sputnik project or the XPS 13. I'm talking full page mother effing, because they all have those really stupid slideshows that show their stupid different computers that go across the entire screen. I would like number 2 to be a Linux box. I'm not asking for number 1 to be a Linux box. How about we make number 2 a Linux box? Can we have that? And then I'm interested.
And the reality is, I think that these companies, and maybe it's not lost on them, maybe they just haven't actually brought it to fruition, but there is a market for this, and you see that market because there are tons of people that are buying Chromebooks. And the only complaint I've ever heard about a Chromebook user ever is not been, I can't have Photoshop and I can't have that. You don't hear that. All I hear is there a way I can download movies to this thing so I can watch it while I'm on an airplane? That's the one complaint I get. And you know what? Linux is a perfect replacement for that.
I don't have I'm sorry. I don't have the calendar in front of me, but did Windows 8 just ship yesterday? No. I'm pretty sure it shipped a while ago. They've been totally wasting all of this time hoping that Microsoft will put together some craptastic show in Windows 10 that can save them. And think about this. Think about all these idiot OEMs that are sitting there with their D on the desk waiting for Microsoft to come along and provide them their next rescue boat. And without Microsoft, what do they have? So it is absolutely in their core, total absolute business interest to find something else that makes their product sustainable without Microsoft. Could you imagine your entire absolute business being dependent on one software provider? That seems suicidal to me. Regardless of who it is, it's suicidal.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, there was, and I mean, you and I both know there was a lot more that went into this decision than just that. But there was a time when the food on my table depended on what Microsoft was going to do, and then my ability to roll with those punches, and I wasn't comfortable with that. And like I said, there's more factors that went into that. But yeah, you have no idea what Microsoft is going to do. And that was 7-8 years ago when things were a lot more stable than they are now. I don't think Microsoft knows what they're going to be doing in the next year or 2 years, because I don't think they know exactly for sure, at least, how they're going to stay relevant.
Yeah, if I was Lenovo or Dell, I'd be pretty uncomfortable with that whole arrangement right now. So it's good to see them trying this in India. Hopefully get some traction there, and then they're willing to experiment from outside there. And then, maybe it'll pick up speed and they'll realize there is a very viable alternative there. Finally, I want to talk about VirtualBox 5.0, which we've all been waiting for this one for a while. There's just a few things I want to touch on. There's a lot of little fixes. Paravirtualization support for Linux guest has arrived, and Windows guest, which means if you're running Windows under Linux, it's going to run a lot better, especially Windows 7. Improved CPU utilization also exposes a broader set of CPU instructions to guest OSs, making it much more competitive with VMware, and support for direct access to USB 3.0 devices. Yeah, they can directly recognize USB 3.0 devices and operate at full USB 3.0 speeds. And bidirectional drag and drop support for Windows on all host platforms. If you do have a Linux VirtualBox, you'll now be able to drag from your desktop to the Linux VirtualBox. And disk image encryption. Data can now be encrypted on virtual hard disk images transparently during runtime using AES up to 256-bit data encryption. And they can also do passphrases before you can start the virtual machine now, as well as a bunch of other fixes. VirtualBox 5.0. Finally, Noah, does it feel like it's been a year or two since? I mean, how long is it? I don't. It feels like it's been a decade.
Yeah, it's been a while, but honestly, VirtualBox is one of the few projects that I can honestly say with no equivocations, I have no desires. Like there is nothing that I need VirtualBox to do right now. The very current version that's installed on my laptop, there's nothing I need it to do that it isn't already doing. It does everything I expect it to do, which is once every maybe not for you, but for me, once every 3 or 4 months, I need to spin it up. I need to run some esoteric piece of Windows software. I need to run that for 10 minutes, and then I need it to go away and not exist anymore. And it does that flawlessly.
Do you know what I need? I need one checkbox. One checkbox, 3D acceleration pass-through. I don't care if I got to have a second 3D card. I got to get another NVIDIA card or an ATI card, and I got to put that in my rig. I don't care if I got to burn a PCI slot for that. I want a checkbox. And when I check that checkbox, I want the guest OS to have full, unadulterated access to my video card. I want full mother effing 3D acceleration inside a virtual machine. No guest pass-through, nothing. Take my video card and own it. And I want that in one checkbox. And until VirtualBox has that, I will not rest.
I don't see. So, can you give me a scenario? Are you saying you'd like to use it for a virtual Windows gaming box or something like that?
Or AutoCAD, or video editing, or
right? Okay. So I don't think that. I mean, and Oracle would probably disagree with this, but to me, that's not what VirtualBox is. If I wanted to do something like that, if I want to do hardware level kind of like super intensive, like I'm actually going to use this kind of a thing, I would go with something like Virt Manager with KVM. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then I would do PCI pass-through.
You can do that today in KVM. That's why I brought it up. It is possible to do it today already, but it's 2 days worth of work, maybe?
I see VirtualBox as a way to run. I look at it like a Windows emulator. I don't look at it as true virtualization, I guess. If I want true virtualization, I go to an enterprise-grade virtualization. And I know that they would probably tell me that is what they're aiming for. But to me, that's not virtual. VirtualBox is just a toy that I can use to try things out or to, like I said, is kind of like a way to substitute getting some Windows stuff done. I don't use it for anything serious.
Yeah.
I certainly wouldn't want to edit video on it. And I can completely understand that.
Yeah.
And it would be really cool if they got a lot of those things worked out. But then there's other things that they need. So for example, if we're going to go that route, I'd also want the ability to close VirtualBox altogether and have the guest continue to run in the background if I want to run like a little server or something like that.
Yeah, there are options. Like one of the other things they've added with this version of VirtualBox is you can now start it without bringing up the whole GUI. So you click the virtual machine and you say start headless, and it starts it up in the background as part of the daemon process. And then you can connect them in.
Okay. So there you go. So I would need so stuff like that has to exist. But the other thing is I would need somebody like you that has spent a lot because I don't use virtual environments. I use them on servers all the time, but I don't use virtual environments for my day-to-day working stuff. So I don't have a metric to evaluate is this virtual environment better than the other. I would need somebody like you to say, listen, I've used this particular infrastructure for trying out distros or trying this out, and these are the things I don't like.
It's interesting, though. There's a whole category of users I've heard from them that are mostly in work, and they'll sometimes do it because of restrictions on their PC or because their work doesn't allow them to run Linux. And what they do is a lot of times they'll install VMware or VirtualBox on a Windows computer provided by them by work, and then they'll run Linux full screen in a virtual environment. as their main desktop. And if you think about it, you all of a sudden inherit a bunch of advantages like snapshots, but obviously also privacy, because now with VirtualBox 5.0 you can password protect a virtual machine, and so you can do all of your different shenanigans inside the virtual machine, shut it down at the end of the day, and there's not a trace left on the host Windows operating system, right? But you can also install your own updates, install your own applications. There's no administrator password over your virtual machine because once you're in, it's yours. You got root access. So we hear from people who say, yeah, one of the reasons I actually put VirtualBox 5.0 in the lineup is because people are saying, I use this at work as my full-time environment, and this is where I live, and it's not fast enough, but it's going to get finally faster. VMware Workstation, in my opinion, is still a bit better of a product if you're using it full-time like that, but if you want something that's free and something that's honestly easier to maintain on the Linux desktop, there's no beating VirtualBox.
The only thing I would caution people for, and this is a solid plea straight from my heart, is please do not evaluate Linux based on your experience inside of VirtualBox. I've had a couple of people that have talked to me and said, yeah, I tried Linux, it was horrible. I said, well, what do you mean? Oh, well, I tried Ubuntu, but everything's laggy and you click on a button and it doesn't load. I said, well, hardware are you running it on? Oh, I was running it on a Core i5 with a blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, doesn't sound right. Oh, yeah, well, I just had to close the VirtualBox. I'm like, wait, what? Oh yeah, I was running it in VirtualBox. So just don't base your opinion of how Linux works or doesn't work based on VirtualBox. Don't tell me that software doesn't load or that when you clicked on it, it wasn't responsive. Or don't do that inside of VirtualBox. But if it works for you, all the merrier. Now, me personally, I have replaced that need of when I'm on somebody else's computer and I want to spin up my own Linux desktop, I replace that with X2Go. And I find X2Go, as long as you're cognizantly aware, you're not going to game on it, but as long as you're cognizantly aware of the fact that you're working on a desktop across the internet, I can tell that you're skeptical, but you have to try it first and then come back and tell me that because right now you're thinking, yeah, but it's going to be slow.
No, you know what? We need to do a segment. We need to do a segment on this and on a remote system, because oh my gosh, I have a great story. I'll save it for that segment. We need to do a story on it, segment on it, because it is an amazing way to get access to a Linux box from anywhere you are with low resources, bypass restrictions. It's great.
It'll take you 10 minutes to set up. Yeah.
Okay, Noah. Well, so we'll have links to all the news stories we talked about in the show notes today. And, of course, if you'd like to add anything to our show, our news roundup, go to linuxactionshow.reddit.com, submit stories there, vote on them, or give comments. And then that usually informs a pretty good portion of the news segment on the Linux Action Show. But, Noah, with the news all done, let's wrap it up and go look at the YubiKey. Can this little device, the YubiKey, actually make your life and your servers and computers more secure? Well, actually, yes. And we'll tell you how you can integrate it in with Linux, perhaps to make it even more automated for your SSH logins. But first, I want to talk about our segment sponsor this week, somebody who makes this very segment possible, and that's OSCON, the O'Reilly Open Source Convention, going on between July 20th and 24th in Portland, Oregon, 2015. OSCON, and Noah and I are going to be there too, is a yearly event that features really the best stuff going on in open source. Everybody, any company that uses open source, and that's pretty much everybody these days, pretty much has a reason to go to OSCON. And when I went there, I got some really interesting insights. One of the coolest projects I saw was a guy building a laptop, an open source laptop out of wood. And one of the most interesting conversations I had was actually with a really proprietary company. But the way they were able to take and use open source even to their advantage was very, very fascinating. I really saw the whole spectrum, from conversations with guys from Rackspace and about their vision with Docker and CoreOS. And like most people, you've probably got a lot of items on your learning list, like languages and new tools and answers to questions maybe you've been trying to kick around inside your corporation for a while. Well, OSCON is the place to go hyper-focus on these types of issues, on these types of questions, and on that next technology you might be able to build on top of. And in this year, they've added some new functionalities, some new nice features, some super focus courses that I want you guys to go check out. But really, right now, for just a little bit longer, if you tweet at Jupiter Signal, this is, I think, the last week we're going to do this, tweet at Jupiter Signal with hashtag OSCON, with a reason why you want to go to OSCON, and we're going to give away a free bronze pass, so that way you can make it out to OSCON. Now, if you're in the Portland area, I want you to go. We're going to be down there July 22nd. We'll be at OSCON, rocking the floor, and we're also going to have a meetup afterwards. You can find out more at meetup.com/Jupiter Broadcasting, and use our promo code Linux. Promo code Linux when you're checking out at OSCON, and you'll get 20% off a gold, platinum, silver, or bronze pass. That's not so bad, really. 20% off is nice. Go to OSCON. You'll be able to stay current on technologies that impact your business, uninterrupted focus like you don't get at the office, and full stack exposure at OSCON. That's just some of the reasons to attend. Use our promo code Linux to save 20% off, and say hi to Noah and I. We'll be down there with cameras and microphones as well. Are you excited? Noah, what do you think? It's going to be a good time.
I am. I'm excited. I'm excited about OSCON because as an IT professional, those are the kind of conferences where I get a chance to have uninterrupted focus, where I get a chance to find out about the latest and greatest technologies, what solutions I can sell, how I can make money. We talk a lot about building community, and all of that stuff is really great. But at some point, I have to start thinking about how I'm going to put food onto the table. And this is a way that I can use open source. I can use Linux to make some money. And where you find out how you can do that.
Yeah.
Or you get the answers are conferences like OSCON.
Yeah.
And so, I'm excited for that perspective. And I'm also excited for the meetup that's going to happen right afterwards. We'll get to meet up with some people and eat food. And that obviously is
very excited
a super
about
enjoyable
any
aspect.
opportunity we get to eat and make an excuse to have a social event out of it. I'm excited about. So go to OSCON to check out more. You can find out more at their website, and also use the promo code Linux to get 20% off your ticket. And if you're going to make it there, please do come say hi to us and RSVP at that meetup. So we can let the folks know at the restaurant how many people we're going to expect to see. Check out OSCON, promo code Linux, and thanks to OSCON for sponsoring this segment. Now, Noah, I know you have a video on a roll, but I have a video from YubiKey about the YubiKey Nano, which is the device you use, right?
I use two of them. I use the Neo standard, which is the standard looking YubiKey that has the Neo interface in, and then I also use the Nano Neo, which is the little one that sticks out of the side of my laptop.
I'm just going to play like a minute of the Nano, so that way people that are listening know what kind of hardware we're talking about. It's a really small unit that, for you audio listeners, goes almost like flush with the USB port here. I'll just play just a moment of it.
Nano. The YubiKey Nano is a standard YubiKey in a very small form factor.
About the size of a quarter.
When you insert the YubiKey Nano into a USB port, it almost disappears. This is useful for laptops, for example, when you need to authenticate regularly and are happy with leaving your YubiKey in your computer all the time.
Which is kind of like the core reason you use your Nano. Like, you have a laptop, you just leave it on all the time. Yeah. So now, no, we don't need to play any more of their video because you use YubiKey every single freaking day. And there's several models, and we have the information about the different models in the show notes if people want to check it out. We'll have a link in there. But there's different ones in there. You and I each have. I have the real basic one. You have much fancier ones than I do.
The main segment is going to talk primarily about SSH authentication. Now, the YubiKey is specifically designed as an open device, an open authentication device that you can use in a number of different scenarios. And the segment that we pre-recorded is going to talk specifically about how to use it to authenticate into SSH. But of course, there's a number of other things that you can do with the YubiKey, one of which is the one-time password feature.
Yeah.
So when you press the button on the YubiKey, it's going to generate a one-time password that you can use to log into some of your accounts. Now, that one-time password is then cross-referenced with the password at the Yubico server to see if it is a valid one-time password or an invalid one-time password. And then if it's valid, it lets you proceed. If it's invalid, it denies you. Now, you can use that one-time password feature with a number of different services, including places like the blockchain.info, the wallet service, or a lot of people use it with LastPass. Now, I use it with LastPass, and that's a super compelling way to use your YubiKey to secure LastPass. You don't need anything special. Any of the YubiKeys, to the best of my knowledge, will support one-time password authentication, with the exception, I think, of the FIDO U2F, and I'll look at that while the video is playing and confirm one way or the other. But even the standard $25 YubiKey is going to do this, and all you need to do to set it up in LastPass is open your LastPass up inside of the browser, click on Settings, and then inside of the Settings window, there's two-factor authentication. Check it, plug your YubiKey in, and press the button.
Nice.
And that will pair your YubiKey with LastPass. Now, one of the big concerns that some people had was, what happens if I lose my YubiKey? Well, for my answer to that is I have two. I pair both my YubiKeys with my LastPass, so if I ever lose one, I have a backup. Now, mind you, the whole idea of two-factor authentication is the same thing as the debit card, something you have and something you know, your debit card and your PIN. With the LastPass, it's something you have, your YubiKey, and something you know, your password. If you are to complain to the company that they should let you into your account even though you don't have the thing you're supposed to have, you kind of defeat the purpose of having two-factor authentication in the first place.
And actually, you know what? No, they're only $25. That's not horrible to have two of them.
You should have two. I really think that. So that is how you can use the one-time password feature. Now, I haven't really used the U2F feature a whole lot other than to use it to sign into my Google account. And I actually disabled it because it had some conflicts with the CCID function. And I'll talk about that more a little bit in the video that is just coming up.
Okay, all right, Noah. Well, there we go. So, and now stay tuned. So if you want to see how Noah rolls his YubiKey into his Linux production environment, he's got it all set up for us right here. Here we go.
I'm going to walk you through exactly what it takes to use the YubiKey as an SSH token or in SSH certificate. In a typical SSH environment, you would generate a key on your laptop and copy the public certificate over to the server. When you go to initiate an SSH session, what happens is the laptop uses the private key to prove that it is an authorized user to access the server, and then access is granted. But that can be disadvantageous for a couple of reasons. The first being that private key, if it ever gets out, if anyone were to ever copy it, it becomes useless because then the security is exposed. So you need to keep very, very close track of that private certificate. And that basically rules out copying them over a USB thumb drive or storing them on a NAS or in a cloud space. You would never want to do that with an SSH certificate. So typically what you do is when you get a new laptop, you generate a new certificate, and it's one certificate per computer. Now that works great for many people and for most things, but the problem for me is I change laptops about as often as the wind changes direction. And I have 50 some odd servers that I manage on a monthly basis, and every time I get a new laptop, I would have to regenerate my SSH security configuration and send out that public certificate to each one of those servers, and that gets to be extremely tedious. The nice thing about the YubiKey, when used correctly, is that it never gives up the private key. So the private key is stored on this device, and this can be considered completely secure. I can take this from one computer to the other, and there is really no security risk in doing so. Now, I keep two with me on a daily basis. I keep one that I carry around my neck for using computers like my office computer, or when I'm in Seattle using any of the computers at JB. And then I have a smaller one that I keep inside of my laptop known as the Nano, which is a tiny little, it just fits right inside of the USB port. And so essentially anytime I have access to my laptop, I have access to all of my SSH security keys. Now, there are a couple different YubiKeys, and we need to make sure that we have the correct one, because if we don't, this isn't going to work. The first one I want to talk about is the $18 YubiKey FIDO UTF. Now, this is the universal two-factor authentication. It is not compatible with what we're going to do here tonight. So if you buy that one, it's a little blue key, sells for about $18. If you have that one, this isn't going to work for you. The second one is the YubiKey Standard. This is kind of the generic, this is the YubiKey that everyone kind of talks about. That one, again, is not going to work. What we need is the smart card interface or the CCID interface. And if it doesn't have that, again, we're not going to be able to use it with the SSH certificate. So what we need to have the YubiKey Neo. Now again, they have the YubiKey Neo that it looks like the standard YubiKey, but is the Neo. And then we have the Nano Neo, which is the tiny little one that fits inside of your computer. So you need to pick one of those up to begin with. All right, let's get started. This is going to take us about 10 minutes from start to finish. I'm going to be using the System76 Lemur with a fresh install of Ubuntu 14.04 64-bit. So to get started, the first thing we're going to do is we are going to install the OpenSC. Now this is a smart card interface reader that's going to allow us to talk to the YubiKey. So we're going to type sudo apt-get install OpenSC. Now I'm going to append a TAC-Y to the end of it, and that's going to allow me to not have to answer questions. It's going to ask us for our secret confidential sudo password. We'll give it to it, and we'll press enter. And now we have OpenSC. So at this point, we can go ahead and insert our YubiKey into the side of the computer. And now we can install the Yubico software. So to do that, we have to add the Yubico repository. We're going to type sudo apt-add repository ppa:/yubico/stable. We're going to press enter. It's going to ask us if we're sure we want to add it. We do, so we'll press enter. Now we're going to type sudo apt-get update to refresh that repo list. And now we can actually install the Yubico software. So the Yubico tool that we need is the Yubico PIV tool, sudo apt-get install Yubico PIV tool. And again, I'm going to append that TAC-Y. All right, now that we have the Yubico tool installed and we have our reader installed, let's go ahead and generate a public certificate. So we're going to type Yubico PIV tool TAC-S 9A TAC-A generate TAC-O public.pem. And we're going to wait, and now it's going to generate that certificate. All right, now we have a newly generated private key. So now we have the software installed, and we have the public certificate generated. This is the appropriate time to change the PIN if you want to do so. Now the default PIN on the YubiKeys is 123456 for the PIN and 12345678 for the puck. The puck is kind of this administrative thing that's used to reset the PIN in case you forget it. Now you have to be really careful, because if you lock yourself out of the PIN, I think you have 3 attempts by default to do it, it destroys the certificate and you got to start all over again. If you forget the puck, I'm not exactly sure what the process is involved, but I know it's pretty complicated, and it may even involve sending the key back to YubiKey. I'd read a couple forum posts about people that had locked themselves out, and it was kind of a bad deal. I've never done it, so I can't personally attest to how easy or not easy it is, but I wouldn't recommend it, so I would type very carefully. So let's start by verifying that we know what the PIN is to begin with. To do that, let's open up a terminal and type Yubico PIV tool TAC A verified TAC PIN TAC capital P 123456, and we'll get the message successfully verified PIN if that PIN is correct. Now if it's not, this is where you need to stop and go back and see if at any point you had changed your PIN, and if it's a new YubiKey, I'd suggest sending it back to Yubico to get a replacement. But if you want to change your PIN, now would be the appropriate time to do that. And we can do that by typing Yubico TAC PIV TAC tool space TAC A change TAC PIN, and we're going to change our PIN from 123456 to just 1234. And we'll press enter, and now we successfully changed the PIN code. All right, so now we're ready to self-sign the certificate. Now, up to this point, I've been trying to keep you audio and listeners in mind by narrating all of the commands I'm using, so you can kind of keep up. And of course, again, you can find a list of those commands over in the show notes. But this next command for self-signing the certificate is just really long and cumbersome, and saying it out loud just isn't really going to work. So I'm going to go ahead and just paste it into my terminal. But essentially what we're doing is self-signing the public certificate that we've created. And it's going to verify that PIN and self-sign the certificate. Now that I've done that, we can import the certificate by using the command Yubico PIV tool TAC A import certificate TAC S 9A TAC I cert.pem. And now we've imported that certificate. At this point, the YubiKey is provisioned. So we have an SSH key that we've generated, we've signed, and it is on the YubiKey. So we're done. We have done all the configuration we need to do to the YubiKey. So the next part of this is going to be how we set the computer up to use the YubiKey to authenticate into SSH. We've set up our YubiKey and the certificate to work correctly with SSH. Now we are going to set the computer up to talk to the YubiKey to tell it to look for the SSH certificate inside of the YubiKey. So the first thing we need to do is we need to extract the public key off of the YubiKey. So to do that, we're going to open up a terminal, and we are going to type SSH keygen TAC D, and it's going to look for the OpenSC provider. Now, this is going to be different depending on your distro. In the case of Ubuntu, which is what we're using here, it's going to be in /user /lib /x86 _64 Linux -GNU /OpenSC -pkcs11.so. That is the file that references our YubiKey. And when we enter that, what is going to spit out is our public key for the YubiKey. So this is the key that we're going to copy with no spaces and no extra lines, and we're going to place that into our server. And that's what we're going to use. Now, the next thing we need to do is configure our SSH client to look at the YubiKey. So to do that, we're going to go into the etc directory and go into the SSH directory and look at the SSH config. We're going to open the SSH configuration, and at the very, very bottom, we are going to add a new line, and we are going to say pkcs11 provider space user space lib space x86 underscore 64 dash linux dash gnu slash opensc dash pkcs11.so. And this is going to tell the SSH client, when you're establishing an SSH connection, look for this, look at the YubiKey to see if a valid key exists. So let's go ahead and try to authenticate into a server. Now you'll notice, you'll see this line pop up. That's when we try to authenticate into a server. No such identity, home noah.ssh ID, no such file or directory. Basically, that's saying that this YubiKey doesn't contain a valid certificate, and thus it's prompting us for a password. So let me pull out this YubiKey that we were using to configure and plug in my own YubiKey that I use. And I'll run that same command with a different user. And now, instead of being prompted for a password, I get prompted for my YubiKey PIN. So I'm going to enter that, and boom, I'm authenticated into the server. So now our system is set up to work properly with the SSH client pointing towards the YubiKey, and the YubiKey being used for SSH authentication. Before I wrap up, I just want to go over a couple possible troubleshooting things that you might want to look into if you have problems while you're running through this. The first thing is verifying that the smart card interface is in fact enabled and that U2F is not enabled. There's a little bit of a bug with the system in that you can't have both of them enabled at the same time without making some modifications to the system. We need a tool to verify that, and it's called the YubiKey Neo Manager. So we can install that by typing sudo apt-get install YubiKey Neo Manager. And again, I'm going to append a tac Y to the end of that. And we're going to wait for that to install. All right, so it says no device found because we haven't inserted this. So we're going to insert a YubiKey. And you see here, it says change connection mode. And right now I have one-time password and CCID. Now I found out that if I enable UTF, CCID stops working. And I've emailed Yubico about this, and they gave me a solution. The solution was to modify some files on the system. I don't use U2F that often, so I just disabled UTF. But you need to have CCID. This is the smart card interface, and that has to be enabled for this to work. And if you don't want to make those modifications of the system, then U2F has to be disabled. And I'll post the answer that Yubico sent me in the show notes if you're interested in having all three enabled. So that's basically it to set the system up to use the YubiKey. Now, on additional systems, as you go to use the YubiKey, all you have to do is set up your SSH config to point to that OpenSC provider, and you'll be able to use your YubiKey. On Ubuntu, again, it's in that user/lib/x84 _64 -linux -gnu /opensc -pkcs11.so. On Ubuntu 32-bit, it's /user/lib/i386 -linux -gnu /opensc -pkcs11.so. And on Arch, it's /user/lib/opensc -pkcs11.so. So hopefully you found that interesting. Hopefully you'll have a chance to go out. Anyone that has them, the YubiKey, you'll have a chance to configure it to use it for SSH. It has totally changed the way that I manage servers, makes my life a whole lot easier, and hopefully it'll make yours easier as well.
So no, I noticed sort of for the audience's benefit, that was rather Ubuntu specific, but as a Fedora and Red Hat user yourself, have you considered using like some of the PAM authentication methods that are a little more distro agnostic but then rely on PAM?
Yeah, so first of all, the video that I showed actually works on all of the distros. It will work on, I use it on Ubuntu, I use it on Arch, I've used it on Fedora. The problem with Fedora is because I use Fedora so often, I don't make notes to myself on where locations of files are, because I happen to know where they are.
Yeah.
And so, but if you look in the show notes, I've listed the location for the the PKCS 11 provider is listed inside the show notes, and if you want to set it up to work with Fedora. Now, PAM is an interesting way of authenticating. Essentially, what PAM does is you tell the server, when somebody wants to SSH in, I want you to look at this server out here and decide if they should be able to authenticate in based on the one-time password that they generate. So when I go to SSH into a server, I would stick my YubiKey in and I would just press the button, and it will generate. My SSH password is a one-time password.
Yeah.
Now that's very secure, and it's a great way to do things, but it does rely on the fact that Yubico servers have to be functioning and available.
Right.
And if there's any sort of network connectivity issue between your server and their server,
which might be why you're logging in. I mean, who knows what?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. If I'm SSHing into a server for Windows people, you won't understand this, but for us Linux people, once we set the server up, we don't touch it again.
Yeah, let's get to install an update, which you might even do remotely through the Red Hat Enterprise administration system. You don't really log into it very often.
If I'm SSHing in, I'm fixing something to begin with.
Right.
That's the last time I want to be going, oh, well, now I have to troubleshoot PAM because this server, the internet's not working, or maybe that's why I'm getting, like you said, why I'm getting it into the first place.
Yeah.
And because I disable password authentications, if PAM doesn't work, I'm really hosed. So that's why I don't particularly prefer PAM, but it is a great option, especially if you've already spent the money on a YubiKey Standard or a YubiKey Edge. Then you can use those to authenticate with PAM. Now, I did look into it while the video was playing. U2F will not, the U2F FIDO will not work with anything other than U2F. It is U2F only. So you can't use it with one-time password. You can't use it with static password. It is just U2F.
Do you see Tom Racing's question in the chat room about modifying SSH_config versus SHD_config in the video? He says,
no.
He said you modified SSH config, not the SSHD config. So, of course,
Right.
SSH config would be the client settings, and SSHD config would be the server settings.
Right. I have not changed anything in SSHD. The only thing that gets done on the server is in the authorized key files in the home directory. So when you're sitting at the server, go into your home directory, go over to the hidden folder .ssh inside your home directory, and create a file called authorized keys, and paste that. What I pasted into that gedit document, you can paste that into that authorized key files, and that's all the configuration that's needed at the server level. Now, here's what's even better. If you're using DigitalOcean, they actually have a UI for this. You click on the add SSH key, paste that text block into DigitalOcean, and now when you provision a new DigitalOcean droplet, you just get a button that says YubiKey, and you click on YubiKey, and when you spin up your DigitalOcean droplet, you get that SSH key is automatically added in.
Nice. So all the commands for most of this are all in the show notes, as well as additional links and resources and commands for Arch and Fedora are in the show notes. And for the Patreons over at patreon.com/today, those of you who are helping support the overall Jupiter Broadcasting Network, I'm going to make Noah's video available to you so you can rewatch that. And so you just go to patreon.com/today and look at the activity feed if you want to rewatch Noah's video and recapture all of that. But don't worry, the commands, for those of you who just watch us, or you can just replay it in the show, are available in the show notes. Go over to jupiterbroadcasting.com, look for episode, 373 we're on right now, and then you see everything Noah has lined out there, including a link to Amazon to get the micro and other ones. I think I'm going to pick up the micro. I've got this guy, but I really like the idea. I've got plenty of USB ports on the Bonobo. I like the idea of just, you know what, I'm just going to, I have a USB port over here I never, ever, ever use. I'm just going to dedicate that to the YubiKey.
So there is a funny side effect to having the nanos, and that is that when you touch them, it does the one-time password generation.
Yeah, it spits it in
because it is so close to the edge of the computer. If you pick up a laptop, oftentimes you'll bump it. And when Chris was configuring my laptop, like numerous times, he would bump it and go, damn it, what is all these numbers or whatever?
Yeah, I wouldn't put it in that USB key. I wouldn't put it in that USB port that you had it in.
Red Hat, well, on that particular laptop, that's the only one.
I know.
The Red Hat plays poker with it. Whoever gets the highest value is spit into the chat room. Like once somebody bumps it, everyone else touches it.
They put it in the IRC.
Yeah, and they play poker with it. Who has the highest? Like, oh, that's great.
Well, there you go. All right, so all that's over there, and plus, we'd love to hear your SSH tricks to make it more secure and more automated. Go to linuxactionshow.reddit.com and leave a comment in the feedback thread, or if you have a project you want to really draw attention to, you can submit it as its own independent link to that subreddit. I'd love to see it because I'm always looking for new ideas. linuxactionshow.reddit.com. But Noah, then thank you very much for doing all of that legwork. That was some great stuff, and I appreciate you getting all that recorded down for us. Go over there and try it out yourself, you guys. We'd love to hear your feedback. But that is the Linux Action Show's look at using the YubiKey. That brings us to the end of this week's broadcast, and we have a bunch of feedback to get to this week. But before we go, I want to just take a minute and talk about somebody who we don't often talk about in Linux Action Show, but I actually think would be perfect for the audience, and that's Linux Academy. They often sponsor the Linux Unplugged program, but we had such shenanigans going down in episode 100 that I moved them here to Linux Action Show to give a chance to talk to a different audience. Linux Academy is a platform for learning about Linux and this technology around Linux, built by people that are truly enthusiastic about Linux. Sort of like the Linux Action Show is brought to you by people who truly care about Linux, and so that makes the difference than when like somebody at CNET or Engadget writes about Linux, or The Verge. They write about Linux with this sort of detached perspective. And that also translates in education. Like online, you can go to places that talk about how to fix your kitchen sink, or how to have the perfect After Effects project, or how to edit something in Final Cut, and how to set up an Apache server. Well, isn't that great? It seems like you're getting a lot for your value for money, a lot of value for your money, because you can take all these coursewares. But the reality is you're going shallow. And you know this. That's why Linux Academy has been set up. They're built by people that truly are enthusiastic and passionate about Linux and open source. They combine their powers together with educators and developers to make the Linux Academy platform. They have over 1,600 courses you can take, all based on Linux. They have 7+ distributions you can choose from. When you choose the distribution, it automatically adjusts the courseware and all of the virtual servers to match that distro. So say you want to learn on Red Hat, or say you want to learn on Ubuntu or Debian. When you choose Debian, the virtual machines and the courseware all reflect that. They have scenario-based labs, so that way you can go deploy something like Nginx or MySQL or Postgres, or set up a backup system, or learn how to use cron in a scenario-based lab, so that way when you go actually work with it in production, it's not the first time you've ever done this. It gives you confidence. And instructor help is available, so that way if you get to a rough spot, somebody can help you. They also have a very active community. They have some of the best courseware on Docker. They just refreshed their courseware on OpenStack, and if you're going down the Red Hat courseware direction, they definitely have the best resources on that. And one of the things I love is when you're in between courses, they have these nuggets. Nuggets are single how-tos that walk you through doing specific tasks. They're about 2 to 60 minutes long, and they're really, really awesome. And like sometimes they're like, how to set up just a backup using Bash, how to manage KVM, how to do something on AWS. And it's just, we're going to deep dive on this thing, which is perfect when you're in between courseware. Linux Academy is what I want you to check out, but I want you to get our special discount. Go to linuxacademy.com/unplugged. That's the 33% discount we give to the Unplugged audience. Since I didn't get a chance to mention it to them, I'm going to give this opportunity to you guys. I don't remember the last time we've mentioned Linux Academy, but they really are a perfect fit for the Linux Action Show audience. So go to linuxacademy.com/unplugged. You'll get the 33% discount. You can check them out for a little bit and see if they're a good fit for you and see what you think. When you're not, and you know what, 33%, that's nothing to sneeze at. Both Noah and I are members. I've been a member since before they were a sponsor because I wanted to check them out. And Noah, you probably subscribed right about when they became a sponsor. Have you been able to check them out? What do you think?
Yeah, actually, I think I actually was with them a little bit before they were a sponsor, because I had to redo. No, I remember what it was. It was right before RHEL 7 came out. I needed to go do what I wanted to get trained on RHEL 7, but I didn't want like the whole course. I just wanted the what's new from RHEL 6 to RHEL 7. Now, at that time, they didn't have the little snippets that they have now, because now they actually cater to that. At that time, it was just they had a RHEL 7 course, but what I was able to do is I could skip through it. Whereas my previous training experience was I actually went to a Red Hat training center, sat down for a week-long course, 9 hours a day, and then the parts I wasn't interested in, I just browsed Facebook while I waited for him to get through that. Now I could just skip through it, and it was great. I got exactly what I needed for a fraction of the price that it would have cost me for the training alone, much less the travel, the hotel expense, all that kind of thing.
Yeah, and they have some really good system set up if you're really busy and you only have a certain amount of time available. They can custom build courseware around that. linuxacademy.com/unplugged. I'm glad I finally get a chance to mention them to you guys, because not all of you listen to Linux Unplugged, and I think this is a really good resource for the Linux community. linuxacademy.com/unplugged. Now, Noah, let's get into our our first feedback. It comes from Cloud E. He's got a SIP problem. He says, currently building a product service flow system to connect, manage, and support an online product for tiered clients that are located in many locations. Fascinating. He says, I'm building a front end in ModX. With building from scratch, a backend database option for CRM, supporting accounting, all this kind of stuff, allow for a time with a database already in place. He wants to know if maybe he can build the ultimate all-together solution. Or should he do an end-to-end platform like things like Zoho connect to a web front end to manage the client product? Or is there maybe an open source platform that takes care of all of this for him that he wouldn't have to roll? He would love to have more information. Any questions, anything we can answer would be greatly appreciated. Let him know. Cloud E. Noah, you got to be digging into this stuff, right?
I did. I got into it with him the other night in the Mumble room. We batted it around for probably a good 45 minutes, and I couldn't offer him any real help once that he wasn't already aware of. So he said, is there anywhere else that I can go for help? And I said, well, we can throw it in the feedback. You can send it in as a feedback, and we can talk about it.
He wants something basically, right? If I'm understanding, he wants to be able to tie in like the whole management system with the phone system and be able to pull information from each system, right? He's trying to look for some system that combines all of it.
Right. Yeah, that ties everything in and allows him to access one database from the other database and cross-reference one database to the other.
Massive system.
Right, and so that is not my area of expertise. If you wanted help setting the servers up to do that, I'd be more than happy to help. But that's a little bit of outside of my area. If
somebody
of expertise
out there knows some sort of open source system that offers a platform like this, linuxactionshow.reddit.com. You want to take Silas Wolf or whatever here?
Yes, I do. That is the
Fedora enthusiast one, which sounds about like you, Noah, if I got to be honest with you.
Yeah, that would be me. He goes, hello, fellow enthusiasts. So I was listening to the most recent episode of Linux Unplugged where I noticed a mention that not many in the audience had tried Fedora 22. Since I'm not able to join the live, I thought I would share my experience via email. I have used Fedora for my work since Fedora 20, as Fedora and Red Hat are the only supported Linux distros by my employer, whose names I won't mention, but it's big and blue. After Fedora 20, I bought an SSD for my ThinkPad and did a clean Fedora 21 install. From Fedora 21, I fed it up to Fedora 22 after watching the Fedora 22 review on LAS. I have actually not had any issues so far. Actually, everything has worked pretty well out of the box. It works better than it did on Fedora 21. I know that Fedora gets a lot of slack, but I have used it for years now in production environment as my desktop workstation and never had any issues that have prevented me from working. I use GNOME as my primary desktop environment. I have Cinnamon installed in case GNOME crafts itself. I have Fedora installed and make Fedora usable. Yes, I agree with Chris. It's necessary, but it's available and easy, and I see no issues there. And a few GNOME extensions to make it all suit my workflow, but nothing major. To me, Fedora and Fedi makes an awesome distro and should be used by default. On my personal laptops, I have both Arch and Ubuntu as well as Fedora laptop. So I have something to switch around between. All I have to say is that I'm actually beginning to favor Fedora more and more as I use it every day. I have only good stuff to say about Fedora, and it's not without flaws, but we really have a perfect Linux distro, or a perfect OS for that matter. Love all the shows, wouldn't get through the week and the commutes without them. So basically, I thought that Silas did a really good job of summing up my take on Fedora, or my perception of Fedora, with the exception of him thinking that you need that nonsense to make Fedora.
I agree. No, I
still think that you don't need it.
Wrong, sir. Audience disagrees with you. The audience, that's official. That makes it fact right there.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to read in Esther's, I think is how you say this next one. What do you think? Esther?
Probably. Audience disagreed with you on barbecue.
Really? Really, we're going there right now? Really? Can you hear the airplanes outside? Can you hear those?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, there's a fly in here at the studio. It's great for recording things. Yeah. Hey guys, great show. Last does a great job keeping me up to date on all things Linux. I know you guys like all things Linux. I thought maybe you'd be interested in this experiment that I ran. I work at a small public library, and I provide technical service to the library and serve on a SPLAT, a special project library action team for the state of Idaho. The typical user environment for public access computers at libraries is Windows. I recently was able to test a Linux environment on 2 public access machines at my library. My biggest concern in doing this was the public pushback or even outright rejection. I was pleasantly surprised by the results, and it convinced me that there were at least some users at tipping points, and underlying OSs may not actually matter. I did run a few hiccups, however, but overall, the two machines were working quite well. I detailed everything on the Splat blog. There's a lot of great tech stuff happening at libraries. We keep hearing that, actually, and the most exciting stuff is Linux-based or open source. There's still a lot of work to be done, but I'm hopeful that in this time, Linux can be accepted more widely. I would be happy to talk more about this, so feel free to contact me. Well, Esther, we invite you to join us for Linux Unplugged. We do that show on Tuesdays at 2 p.m. Pacific. Go to jupiterbroadcasting.com, jupiterbroadcasting.com/calendar to get that converted in your local time zone. Now, here's a heads up. In during the week of OSCON, so the week of July 22nd, we're going to record Linux Unplugged on a Monday. So if you want to join us, we have an open virtual lug. It's a Mumble room. Mumble is an open source like IRC for your voice. And we have an open Mumble room. We just check your mic, and then you can come on the show and join our virtual lug and hang out and talk with us. So Esther, I would love to hear more about that specifically, because we keep getting like these little hints, man, there's big stuff happening in libraries, and we're like, yeah, okay, well, onesie twosie, that's really interesting, but hey, come join us and tell us about it. So Esther, I challenge you, join us for Linux Unplugged, and just go to jblive.tv, go into the chat room, do bang Mumble, you get the Mumble server address, you go to the calendar page, you get the live time. Bob's your uncle. Noah, do you have anything to add?
No, last piece of feedback comes in from Joshua W, and I'm going to just grab the meat of this because it's a little long. Basically, Josh was helping his neighbor, and he says, I spent the entire weekend helping them set up their machines. I only had to build a single driver in DKMS for a little Wi-Fi dongle that they had, the Comcast switch to the Ethernet that it was connected to in their home. One of their family members, an elderly man who had a lot of difficulty using his computer, I'd always dreaded trying to help him because there was a little communication barrier between us, and it's hard to explain something when I take basic computer usability for granted. I walked in to help him get his Wi-Fi today, kernel updated, and had to manually rebuild the driver. He asked me a question. Then he asked me how long it took to learn all of this stuff. When I told him it took me a little over 3 years with learning and tinkering things, he then pointed to a little yellow book of Windows Vista for Dummies and asked if there was anything like that for Linux. And then he goes on to talk about how he had some Amazon shopping to do to see if he could find something similar. For that, basically, what I would tell anyone, if you're looking for a really good book for Linux that'll give you the straight no-nonsense through, it's a little dry, but I would recommend the Linux Bible. If you're still into books, which is this old antiquated version of a PDF, that's a really great one that it really takes everything. You can get everything from I want to learn every little bit about Linux to how do I actually use Linux on a daily basis, and then kind of everything in between. And the chapters are really organized in that you don't have to read one to get something out of the other ones.
Nice. The Linux Bible looks like it's a popular one in the chat room, too. Mm-hmm. All right, Noah, that's a great one. If you want to give us your feedback, go to jupiterbroadcasting.com/contact. And then just choose Linux Action Show from the drop-down, or go to linuxactionshow.reddit.com. There'll be a feedback thread, or you can start your own thread if you feel like a boss. Just start it over there. Also, join us live, won't you? jblive.tv. We do this here show Sundays at 10 a.m. Pacific, which probably I could tell you all the different time zones, but jupiterbroadcasting.com/calendar has that. No, if I wanted to say, hey, check out Noah throughout the week, see maybe what his day job is, what website, what hot tip would I give people?
Yeah, you would send them over to Altispeed. So that's altispeed.com. That's where I do my daily job. We are an open source company. We provide front end support as well as back end support for small to medium sized businesses looking for IT support. And we do that all using open source software, all using Linux. And it works out pretty well so far.
Yeah, so. Yeah, and a lot of times some of the interesting things they're working on end up making it a show here, making it into the topics here. You know what? I'll give a plug for just a small thing we're doing. To celebrate episode 100 of Linux Unplugged, we're just running a shirt like we sometimes do. Teespring.com/LUP100. We're not making a big deal about it, but it is a fun shirt. It is to celebrate our virtual lug. We really have a great community around the show. If you've ever been to an actual lug, we have a lug that's bigger than actual lugs now. I mean, we have a seriously awesome virtual lug, so we wanted to put a shirt together. Teespring.com/LUP100. We have a couple of different colors, and we also have it available in long sleeve. And it's going to be available for 9 more days. And we're not making a big push. We're pretty much selling it at cost. See, it's like $19 for the shirt because we didn't want you to have to pay a whole bunch for shipping. But it's a neat way to celebrate the 100th week of a show that's yet another Linux open source podcast that's I think people really love. Teespring.com/LUP100. And of course, tune in to Linux Unplugged on Tuesdays over on Jupiter Broadcasting. Noah, is there anything else we want to cover this week?
I think we hit it all and then some.
Nice, buddy. All right, everybody. Well, thank you so much for tuning this week's episode of the Linux Action Show. We'll see you right back here next week. So I got a couple of goodies that I want to share with you that I think are interesting. This one I'm testing for like a really bulletproof, like if somebody wants to get on Mumble or something like that. It is, I don't know how well you can see this, but it is a USB device that is a microphone, but it's actually like a cardioid, like a full-on compact microphone. It actually gets pretty decent reviews. So it's way, 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 way better than like, people that use like their built-in laptop microphone or their webcam mic. And all it does, and so I actually have a keyboard too that has a USB port on the keyboard. I have a Logitech keyboard that has a USB bus on it.
Yeah.
So So you take this. It's a little microphone, and it has so it can rotate, and it also you can hook up. So it's got USB on one end.
I might have one of those. Who makes that, and how much is it?
It's CAD makes it. CAD Audio. It's a U9 USB mic, and it's like $9 or something like that. And it does a 50 hertz to 18 kilohertz. It's omnidirectional, 16-bit, 44 kilohertz audio. And it also has a 3.5 millimeter jack on the back, so you could hook up like an audio in. It can also be an audio in device. So not only does it have a pretty good cap mic on it, but it also has an audio in jack, so you could still do regular. You could still just use it as a regular sound card too. So I got this as thinking that maybe, and it even has a little bit of a shock mount to absorb shock from the desk. So I thought maybe I'd get this as a last-minute Mumble Room recommendation test kind of a thing.
Yeah.
So that's goodie number one that I'll be. Then, an XLR cable.
I just went into my Amazon cart.
XLR cable is super exciting. Oh, welcome to the studio life, everybody. An XLR cable. And then this one is the one I'm most excited about. And I think maybe you might have one of these, or you might want to get one of these. I don't know. It is a cough drop,
Oh, yeah.
This is...
I've looked at those numerous times, and I've recommended them to you numerous times, and you kept shooting me down because you're like, it's not built into the mic base. Because for whatever reason, you really want to build into the mic base.
I do, but those ones are too expensive, so I just gave up. Because this one's like $16, $17, and those ones are like $200, so...
Oh, are we going to install this right now? This is so exciting.
I was thinking about it, yeah. Although I don't know if I have a long enough cable. See, I wanted to put it... that one maybe. I specifically, now that after I got one that you can either use as a button or as a foot pedal. And now that I'm thinking about it, I want the foot pedal. Because there's too much S on this desk. But I'll see. So you chat with the people for a bit, and then I'll see if I can get it hooked up. So here we go. So I have... so for demonstration purposes, I have it up on the table, so that way I can... well, I guess it works in one sense because you can hear me, because I haven't even tested it. So I guess this part works. So the idea here is... And by the way, while we're doing all this, I'm still installing updates on my Arch rig. I figured why not do a complete system upgrade before the show starts. What's that? Why? What? The fact that this is working?
You said it obviously it works because you guys can hear me.
All right, so the idea is this will be a pedal eventually, but the idea is, I've gotten... People have just really been chewing me a new one for every single fucking thing I do these days. Every time I ring the bell, every time I clear my throat, every time I do anything. So I thought, well, okay, I can understand the clearing the throat thing, but there's not going to... I have a window that's blowing in air from the outside. That's not going to change. I'm not going to stop clearing my throat. So I have this it's called a cough drop, and the idea is that I could just push this button. Well, it'll be a foot trigger, and it's an instant mute. And this is particularly nice for me because our mixer is totally digital. There's no physical button for me to press to mute myself. So I can just...
And there's no pop either, which is great.
It's nice and silent. It has a...
Oh, hold on a second. Push that again. And talk, obviously. So is there another mic open?
Oh, yeah.
Is there another mic
open? The other room mic is open. Yeah, here, I'll mute that. Oh, yeah.
I was going to say, because it's not a mute then. It's a very, 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 very,
No. The second mic's on, just so that way when I got up, you could hear me. So that way you knew what I was futzing around with. Yeah. So here, I'll do it with the other mic off, so that way you can hear it. Oh!
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. That's really cool.
And how does it sound when I come back? Does it sound okay when I come back?
See, now mute again. Talk. No, yeah, it's totally silent. That's
awesome.
And
now I'm back, yeah. So I'm going to say something. I hope this goes in the outtakes because I mean it. I've been thinking a lot about it. If somebody wants to rent me an RV, I would like to rent your RV. I don't care where. Well, I do care a little bit. But you know what? I thought about this, and I think this show, here, I was thinking, no, I need to get to Grand Forks, North Dakota. But you know what I'd really like to do is I'd like to drive to Grand. Now I know I looked at the drive. That's crazy. But if I could do shows, it's not. Yeah, no, exactly. If I could do shows, especially if I could do shows the whole way. The thing is there is no way in hell I'm gonna get. So if I buy an RV, this is who I am. If I buy an RV, it's going to be like a $300,000 RV minimum. Like, right? Let's be honest.
At least you're honest.
Yeah, right? Because, like, I'm not going to buy shit, right? Yeah, but if I could just rent something or borrow something, then I don't care because I didn't pay for it. I'm just using it for a little bit. It could, in fact, if it's a piece of crap, that kind of adds to the story a little bit. Like, oh, I broke down, and now I'm here stuck.
It really does.
Yeah, exactly. So if anybody out there has an RV, they want to rent the Linux Action Show, email Angela at JupiterBroadcasting.com.
Oh, great. Yeah, that's you just gained yourself some real points there. Not only do you want to spend money on renting an RV,
no, she's all down for it. She's down for it. She'd way rather I rent one than buy one because that's where I'm at. I'm like,
okay, here's what you sound like. Now you sound like my wife. Hey, guess what? I saved you $350 today. How'd you do that? Well, I went to JCPenney's and they had a sale for 15% off, and so bought $700 worth of stuff, and it was $350 off. No, you spent $400. I saved.
No, here's my question. Would you rather we spend $14,000 on an air conditioner for the whole studio, or I get an RV?
Me personally?
No, I don't know.
It'd be way more fun.
I do need an office lackey. Wes, are you watching, by the way? Because to be not speaking of lackey, but Wes, if you're watching, I'd like to have you join me on Tuesday again. I don't know if you're watching by chance, but that would be really fun. I do need an office lackey, Jordan. If you're in my... Okay, let me just say this. If you are within like 40 miles of the Arlington, Washington area, please come here and work with me. Yeah, we need help. We need more people in here doing stuff. Over the next few weeks, we're going to be recording a lot of shows to prepare for OSCON and LinuxCon, and Alan's going on trips, and it's going to be very, very, very busy. And so if you have some free time over the summer and you're in our area, we could definitely use the help. We could use help in studio just for co-hosting, like Tech Talk Today and Linux Unplugged, but we could also use help for technical issues, file storage issues, all the kind of stuff that I know how to handle but just don't have time for.